Our story begins on the Arcadia continent, a land destined for a new name. Beside it lay Truvania, a realm where different races once lived in harmony. But deep in the forests, the scattered orc tribes suddenly united as one. They conquered the continent, oppressing humanity until a brutal war for freedom began. A hero named Crossan rose, training countless knights with his unique methods. He led them to a hard-fought victory, finally ending the long conflict. But the nobles and priests, fearing his influence, began to plot against him. They exiled their only competent military leader, a truly brilliant political move. Soon after, a new terror descended from the skies, bringing a second war. With Crossan and his loyalists gone, humanity faced the threat of extinction again. Eventually, the cornered humans of Truvania resorted to a desperate final gambit. They poured their power into a forbidden ritual, summoning a warrior from another world. But the hero they summoned was far more brutal than the one they'd cast out. This new hero demon single-handedly slayed the Red Dragon and won the war. He stood as the undisputed savior, a figure of immense and terrifying power. But as history has shown, human foolishness is a cycle that always repeats. And so our story shifts to a remote rain-soaked forest on the same continent. Here in the mud and rain, a fallen knight draws his final ragged breath. Even the local wildlife seems to have developed a taste for the dramatic. Its gaze is fixed upon an ancient, twisted tree, a silent witness to the decay. But the forest is far from quiet, as a desperate battle rages in the downpour. Knights clad in green and silver fight for their lives against monstrous beasts. Suddenly, a blinding flash of green light erupts, tearing through the darkness. The Fenslot Royal Guard arrives, tracking a severed summoning spell to this location. Their leader, a man named Kuslan, is called to witness a grim discovery. His hardened expression melts away into pure, unadulterated shock. Before them lies a scene of utter devastation, a roadside massacre. He can barely comprehend the scale of the slaughter that took place here. A mage finds traces of forbidden magic and drugs, but the princess is gone. They realize this was no random attack, but a targeted ambush on a noble's escort. The mage reports his findings to Kuslan, floating ominously in the rain. He reveals the magic's origin, the continent of Arcadia, a place of dark power. The news sends a chill down the spine of even the most seasoned knights. Stranger still, the bodies show no signs of a struggle or a fight. It wasn't a battle, it was something far more one-sided and brutal. This was the work of a predator, a merciless and overwhelming hunt. Kuslan demands an explanation, unable to accept such a simple, grim answer. The conversation shifts to the princess's kidnapping, a known act of treason. They recall how the Duke's illegitimate son took the princess hostage in a desperate bid for power. He had conspired with the enemy nation of Maris, making this an international incident. Even with reinforcements from Maris, the idea of a lone hunter is unthinkable. But the mage admits that, unfortunately, it's not entirely impossible. The story then flashes back to a clear, moonlit night. It seems the kidnappers made a fatal error. They trespassed on his territory. The princess could only watch, her face a mask of blood and terror. She lies broken on the ground, the sole survivor of the initial attack. The culprit was one of Truvania's most feared monsters, second only to dragons. Its primal rage is a force of nature, untamed and absolute. The kidnappers had stumbled into the lair of a monstrous ogre, and this particular monster was the architect of the entire massacre. The mage explains that this beast is known for one thing: it never leaves its prey alive. Kuslan realizes the severed summoning spell must be connected to this monster. A wave of despair washes over the knights. Their mission seems hopeless. He can't accept it. The pieces of the puzzle just don't fit together. But a single glaring contradiction cuts through his frustration. If the ogre is a creature of pure, indiscriminate slaughter, then why were the bodies at the scene not killed instantly? The horrifying truth dawns on them. The monster didn't just kill, it captured. Deep in its lair, the princess pleads for her life, her hope extinguished. Their target is confirmed. The missing princess Leonia is still alive. As dusk settles over the forest, our story shifts once again. We follow a group of merchants trekking through the treacherous woods. They travel the Faren trading company's route as the sun begins to set. Their leader complains, realizing they're lost and in serious danger. But among them is a silent hooded figure, watching with a calm intensity. He questions the merchant, Faren, about his familiarity with this path. The hooded man internally regrets taking this contract without more backup. Faren quickly lies, insisting this is a route he knows well. He blames the changing landscape for his confusion, a truly convincing excuse. But the hooded guard's piercing gaze shows he sees right through the deception. One of the guards suggests the terrain has been deliberately altered by an enemy, but the hooded man Baxter silences him, his senses screaming of imminent danger. He explodes into action, his sword a blur as the ambush is sprung. Their attackers are gnolls, a pack of savage, hyena-like monsters. But they're wearing orc-made armor, confirming their worst fears. This is a trap. Faren desperately orders the merchants to stay together, knowing separation means death. The 4 hired guards stand back to back, a small island in a sea of enemies. Dozens of glowing eyes emerge from the darkness, surrounding them completely. Baxter's gaze hardens as he feels the tide of violence about to break. The horde charges, and the desperate battle for survival begins. The battlefield erupts into a maelstrom of steel, claws, and blood. The guards fight with grim determination, shields splintering under the assault. One of the guards unleashes his fury, crushing a monster under his boot. But the gnolls are relentless, and a heavy blow sends a helmet flying. Another guard screams, overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers. Faren and his men can only watch in terror at the brutal display. But the red-haired warrior snaps, his bloodlust turning on the merchants. Faren quickly gets the message. Apparently, don't distract the berserker is a universal rule. The guard tells his fallen comrade to hang on, promising him a full payday. Baxter, ever the professional, warns them the real threat may still be lurking. The gnolls' cackle confirms Baxter's fears. This was all just a setup. A panicked merchant points into the darkness, his voice trembling with terror. And there it is, a monstrous troll emerges, its shadow swallowing the moonlight. Its gaping maw is a horrifying cavern of teeth, drool, and pure malice. The guards can only stare, realizing their night just got upgraded to impossible. Baxter's hand tightens on his sword. Fear is a luxury he can't afford. The troll effortlessly lifts a boulder, preparing to deliver a crushing blow. It hurls the massive rock, forcing the guards to scatter for their lives. The impact is devastating. A guard scream lost in the thunderous crash. Faren realizes their formation is now a death trap. Huddling just makes them a bigger target. Faren the merchant is already writing his will, convinced they're all doomed. But Baxter's focus is absolute, his gaze locked on the unfolding nightmare. To their horror, the troll isn't just a random beast, it's actively joining the hunt. It scans the battlefield, searching for another projectile to launch at them. Baxter realizes this is no wild animal. Its movements are too deliberate, too trained. And watching from the shadows is the true mastermind of this ambush. The remaining guards stand before the behemoth, their berserker focused only on getting paid. Baxter snaps into command, barking orders to create a desperate strategy. The red-haired warrior explodes, calling the plan insane and demanding a better one. But Baxter calmly replies that there is a plan, one his comrade knows all too well. He reminds his partner of an old, reckless tactic: get close and personal. The troll's glowing red eyes fixate on its prey, a predator sizing up its meal. The berserker curses under his breath, clearly not a fan of this particular plan. But Baxter is all business, his face a mask of pure focused aggression. Suddenly the troll pauses, its brutish focus shifting to something else entirely. Its gaze turns upward, the red malice replaced by a strange blue reflection. A new player enters the field, a dark silhouette against the full moon. Clad in dark armor, a single blue eye gleams with an otherworldly light. He lands with the force of a meteor, the ground cracking under the impact. A wave of blue energy slams into the troll, staggering the colossal beast. Baxter can only stare in disbelief, his mind racing to understand what just happened. The colossal troll stumbles backward, its massive form crashing to the ground. The berserker rushes to Baxter's side, demanding to know what trick he just pulled. But from the ground, the troll's eyes see only a figure wreathed in blue energy. The guards realize this isn't Baxter's doing. It's the work of this terrifying newcomer. The mysterious warrior's form seems to shift, growing into a monstrous, hulking giant. He walks forward with heavy, deliberate steps, an avatar of pure destruction. The seasoned mercenaries are frozen in place, utterly dwarfed by this new presence. The giant stands over them, a silent titan silhouetted against the moon. All around him, the gnolls lie broken, their bodies crushed by overwhelming force. The mysterious giant stands amidst the carnage, casually crushing a gnoll's skull. His gaze is cold and analytical as he inspects a piece of the broken armor. The berserker's bravado is gone, replaced by confusion as he questions Baxter. Baxter explains this is a being of legend, one they should never have encountered. A cold mist escapes his lips, the only sign of life from the silent titan. He calls it the most fearsome monster in these forests, a local legend of death. A legend that says once you see it, you are already marked for death. And with heavy, deliberate steps, the monster begins to move toward them. So the thing that saved them from the monsters is an even bigger monster, an ogre. But as the otherworldly glow fades, a clear, human-like eye looks back at them. Baxter's mind puts a name to his terror, a forest ogre. He recalls the legends of this rare and powerful species. They are said to be intelligent, persistent, and unmatched in strength. The merchants just see a big shadow, wondering why their guard is suddenly a statue. Baxter's survival instincts scream at him, but he knows running is futile. To flee from a predator like this is to accept your fate as prey. Suddenly, a vision flashes through his mind. A young ogre with haunted, glowing eyes. Her face is a mask of sorrow, a stark contrast to the monster before him. The giant ogre then speaks, its voice calm, offering to guide them from here. It tells the terrified mercenary not to be afraid. Yeah, good luck with that. He tells them not to worry, despite his monstrous appearance. The giant offers a hand to the stunned mercenary, a gesture of peace. But the merchants are losing their minds, unable to see past the monster. He introduces himself as Leyon, a half-blood of human and ogre. Our story then shifts to the region of southeast Truvania. A map reveals a marked path through the dense, unforgiving wilderness. The destination is the Kingdom of Arnia, bordering the desolate Help Plain. It's a remote outpost, nestled deep within the treacherous forest. This is Faren village, a small bastion of civilization against the dark. A lone guard on watch duty is suddenly alerted by a sound from below. Leyon stands silhouetted against the moon, a terrifying figure of raw power. He looks down upon the village, a giant returning with a lost flock. The guard's face contorts in alarm as he demands to know who approaches. Behind him, the weary merchants and their guards follow their unlikely savior. Faren complains about his aching bones, while the berserker curses their attackers. But Baxter remains silent, his gaze fixed on the village ahead. They arrive at the village's massive wooden barrier, a fortress in the wilderness. The guard recognizes the ogre, shouting down to Leyon with familiar concern. Apparently, giant monsters have curfews. Leyon calmly explains he's guiding a trading company that has business with the chief. He vouches for the strangers, bringing them into the safety of his home. The guard trusts Leyon, but he's not about to let a group of strangers in after dark. Faren the merchant explodes, blaming the village's directions for getting them lost. His outburst only confirms the guard's suspicion that they're clueless outsiders. But the guard stands firm. Without proof of their identity, they're not getting in. Faren desperately demands they fetch the village chief to clear this all up. Leyon, however, seems to be putting the pieces together in his own way. He tells the guard what he overheard. The path was altered, and someone was in trouble. The mention of trouble in the forest finally gets the guard's attention. Leyon then makes an offer no one can refuse. He'll personally handle any problems. You know, casually. As the tension breaks, Baxter watches on, the silent observer in this strange negotiation. Inside the walls, Faren village rests under a blanket of stars. It's a small, rustic settlement, a tiny speck of civilization in the wild. At its heart stands a stone chapel, its windows glowing warmly in the night. Inside the village hall, a mug is slammed down onto a wooden table. The mercenaries are given a warm welcome, though some look less than thrilled. The village chief laughs, amused by Leyon's confident promise to handle any trouble. Faren the merchant chides him, recalling their terrifying first impression of Leyon. He praises Leyon, saying his protection was better than 10 mercenaries. But Baxter, who clearly doesn't do small talk, cuts straight to business. He asks about the formidable walls that encircle the entire village. He notes that while monster attacks are common, the walls seem excessive for that purpose alone. Baxter voices his deepest concern, hoping that his instincts are wrong. He asks the question that hangs heavy in the air, "Are you preparing for war?" The room falls silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Leyon looks on confused, while Faren laments his guard's terrible timing. But Baxter's gaze is unwavering. This is a question that needs an answer. The village chief's eyes narrow, weighing the stranger before him. He finally speaks, correctly identifying them as mercenaries familiar with conflict. A flashback ignites, showing a desperate battle from a bygone era. The chief explains that war in his time was a revolution against orcs who treated humans like cattle. He describes a time when orcs were the oppressors, a united and terrifying force. But he says that modern wars are different, fought for selfish interests until both sides fall. The very concept of war seems to trouble Leyon, a puzzle he can't quite solve. The chief looks on with weary eyes, hoping his village will be spared such a fate. He explains the walls are a manifestation of his people's collective wish for peace. But the berserker isn't buying it, slamming his mug down in frustration. His sudden outburst silences the room, drawing everyone's startled attention. He calls out the chief's words, seeing the walls not as wishes but as a war machine. Leyon watches the exchange, trying to understand the mercenary's cynical view. The berserker's distrust then shifts to Leyon, questioning the nature of the monster in the room. The berserker recalls Leyon's raw power, crushing a troll in a single bare-handed strike. His accusation hangs heavy in the air, creating a rift in the room. The chief notes that war is a sensitive topic for the berserker, a man named Tylok. Tylok demands proof that Leyon isn't a weapon, and that he's the only one of his kind. The village chief finds the accusation a bit harsh, telling Tylok he's gone too far. Leyon's face falls, the sting of the mercenary's words clearly visible in his eyes. He lowers his head, a silent acknowledgement of the fear his appearance inspires. Leyon finally speaks, admitting he doesn't understand their hostility. After he saved their lives, he acknowledges that his very existence is something they find difficult to accept. He walks forward, explaining that if he can't prove he's harmless, they'll brand his entire village as a threat. Leyon offers a simple, disarming solution. He wants them to meet his mother. And so, under the light of the full moon, the group follows him deeper into the woods. They approach a small, secluded dwelling hidden away from the main village. On a lonely hill sits a small cabin, a single grave marking the quiet landscape. Inside, a gentle hand rests upon a sleeping figure, a candle flickering nearby. A woman with golden hair sits in silence, waiting in the dimly lit room. A simple meal of bread and cheese is laid out on the wooden table. Outside, Tylok complains about a smell, which Baxter admits is his own monster repellent. The all-natural kind. The woman's head snaps up, her senses alerted to their sudden arrival. With a heavy creak, the door to the small cabin swings open. Leyon fills the doorway, announcing his return to his mother. He explains their delay, mentioning some trouble back in the village. But behind him, Tylok the berserker is completely frozen in place. His tough exterior melts away, replaced by pure, dumbfounded shock. Because Leyon's mother is not a monster, but a calm, beautiful human woman. The story then flashes back 15 years, to a darker time in Faren village. A night of chaos descends as panicked villagers flee from an unseen threat. From the watchtower, guards struggle to confirm a terrifying report. A younger village chief demands answers as the danger reaches their very walls. But his men are paralyzed, admitting they have no idea what they're facing. The guard urges the chief to witness the horror with his own eyes. The chief looks over the wall, his expression hardening with dread. Below, a monstrous beast stands over a fallen victim, its form shrouded in darkness. His eyes widen, recognizing the sheer scale of the threat before them. The creature's glowing red eyes burn with an unholy predatory light. The fallen woman can only identify it as a monstrous ogre. The other guards are paralyzed, their faces pale with fear. One of them screams for everyone to stand down, to not provoke the beast. But the chief recognizes the creature's fangs from an old monster manual. It's not just any monster, it's Truvania's legendary forest wolf. He corrects himself, it's not an ogre, but the legendary forest wolf, Lobo. The chief panics, realizing this beast can easily clear their walls and demand siege weapons. But a younger guard points out that the monster's power isn't the strangest part. He explains that they've been observing the beast, and its behavior is completely unnatural. The monster simply stands over its victim, remaining motionless for hours on end. The chief can't comprehend what he's hearing. A predator that doesn't predate? The guard asks if the legends mention any other motive for the wolf besides pure slaughter. The men on the wall fall silent, trying to understand the creature's bizarre intent. Below, the wolf's glowing red eyes seem to be waiting, watching for something specific. And a horrifying possibility begins to dawn on the village chief. Its eyes burn with an unholy light, a predator of pure, unbridled instinct. The legendary forest wolf Lobo stands as a titan of muscle and malice. And at its feet lies the woman, motionless, the reason for this tense standoff. But the beast remains silent, its gaze fixed on its unmoving victim. Suddenly, its head snaps up, locking eyes with the men on the wall. The guards can only stare back, completely baffled by the monster's strange behavior. Then, in a flash of movement, the stalemate is violently broken. The wolf hurls the woman's body into the air, an unthinkable act of brute force. The men on the wall can only shout in alarm as if that's going to help. She lands inside the walls, thrown to safety by the very monster that captured her. The chief and his men can only stare, utterly baffled by this act of monstrous mercy. On the ground, the woman's fingers twitch, a faint but undeniable sign of life. Against all odds, the victim thrown over the wall is still breathing. Back in the present, Tyluk's tough guy act completely shatters in the doorway. And so we meet Leyon's mother, the woman at the center of that 15-year-old mystery. Inside, the mercenaries are treated to a meal, which one of them enjoys with zero table manners. Tyluk and Baxter can only stand awkwardly, their earlier hostility now completely out of place. Leyon's mother apologizes for the simple meal, blaming her son for the surprise visit. Outside, Leyon sits with his mother while the mercenaries process this very strange family reunion. She promises to discipline her giant son better, as if he'd just forgotten to take out the trash. She finally speaks, her voice calm as she asks their purpose here. But Tyluk isn't focused on her words, but on the way she speaks them. He whispers to Baxter, recognizing an accent that feels dangerously out of place. It's the distinct, refined tone of the royal nobles. Suddenly, the humble cabin feels less like a home and more like a court. Tyluk realizes the entire village must be part of this elaborate deception. Her eyes close for a moment, as if reading their every thought. She acknowledges that her and Leon's life here is far from ordinary. She implies that what they've seen should be explanation enough. She then apologizes for her son's recklessness, asking what more they want. Besides their lives, which he already saved. The mercenaries stand before Leon's mother, the air thick with unspoken questions. But Baxter sees her words for what they are, the opening of a negotiation. She leans into his assumption, suggesting they can find common ground as business people. But Tyluk explodes, refusing to treat this as some kind of simple transaction. He accuses the noble woman of dodging the truth, demanding to know her real identity. Baxter tries to calm him, reminding him that her son just saved their lives. That minor detail. But the berserker's rage is absolute, demanding to know why a noble is hiding out here. He then crosses a line, screaming at her for the decision to bear a monster. She calmly calls his words harsh, but Tyluk's fury only intensifies. He sneers, calling her a shameless coward for hiding from the world's chaos. He recalls the endless wars fought on distant, burning battlefields. He remembers his comrades falling like wheat before the scythe. A conflict so brutal it spilled over into the demon realm itself. A war where humanity was ground into the dirt for scraps of land. The memory of that hell is still fresh, a wound that has never healed. He can never forget the atrocities committed by those armored monsters. The faces of the enemy are burned into his mind, a vision of pure malice. And now all that rage and hatred is directed at the half-blood standing before him. Baxter screams his name, trying to pull him back from the brink of madness. He steps between them, demanding to know the truth hidden behind their walls. Tyluk's voice drips with venom, demanding to know why she would bear a monster's child. His mother tries to calm the situation, but Leon's patience has finally run out. He steps forward, his human form melting away into a shadow of pure rage. With glowing red eyes, he tells the berserker to stop his vile accusations. His pupils narrow into slits, the beast within him finally breaking its chains. His mother screams his name, trying to pull him back, but it's far too late. A single devastating blow sends the berserker flying across the room. Tyluk's eyes are wide with shock, unable to process the sheer speed and power. He's launched from the cabin like a cannonball, a streak of violence in the night. The mercenary crashes into the stone grave outside, shattering it on impact. Looks like the "don't insult the half-ogre's mom" rule is now in effect. Leon's breath comes in ragged, furious gasps, the monster fully awakened. He stares at his own hand, spattered with blood from the devastating blow. His mother can only watch from the floor, her expression a mix of fear and sorrow. The rage still burns in his eyes, the half-blood now a vision of pure fury. The force of the impact echoes through the quiet night, a testament to his power. The cabin wall is reduced to splinters, a gaping hole where the mercenary once stood. As the red haze begins to clear, Leyon looks down, as if surprised by his own strength. He looks out into the darkness, the consequences of his actions sinking in. Outside, Tyluk's scream of agony rips through the silence. Guess he finally ran out of insults. But the pain triggers a memory, a vision of another battlefield, another protector. Tyluk's memory flashes to a man with the same burning intensity, a protector from his past. But back in the present, Leon's rage begins to falter, replaced by sudden confusion. The monstrous fury in his eyes gives way to a dawning, horrified realization. He stands in the wreckage he created, the consequences of his actions crashing down. From the floor, his mother pleads with him, trying to pull her son back from the brink. Her voice cuts through the haze, and the monster within him begins to recede. But a new voice cuts in, and Leyon's attention snaps to the figure in the doorway. Baxter steps out of the darkness, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos. He draws his sword, its blade glowing with a cold blue light. Looks like the negotiations are over. Leyon's eyes widen, the beast within him recognizing a true and equal threat. Leyon's monstrous form pleads, trying to shield his mother from the threat. But Baxter clarifies that his glowing blade isn't meant for the woman on the floor. His piercing gaze locks onto his true target, the one who just lost control. He lunges, explaining his sword is for the one who no longer looks human. Leyon's mother can only scream his name, watching the chaos unfold. Baxter claims he held back, intending only to subdue the rampaging half-blood. He stands guard over the fallen woman, a protector against her own son. But his blade only grazes Leyon's arm, drawing blood and reawakening the beast's fury. A grim realization dawns on Baxter's face as he feels the monster's true power. His enchanted sword, a weapon of legend, barely even scratched the surface. So much for a warning shot. Baxter realizes his blade barely pierced the skin. The ogre blood is no joke. But Leyon isn't just defending. He's on the attack, forcing Baxter to reposition. The mercenary screams a warning, realizing Leyon's blind rage is aimed toward his own mother. The warning comes too late as a monstrous fist connects squarely with his jaw. The impact sends him flying, shattering what little was left of the cabin wall. He's launched into the night, a human cannonball courtesy of an angry half-ogre. He crashes to the ground outside, stunned by the sheer, overwhelming force. But before he can recover, Leyon leaps from the wreckage, a predator descending on its prey. He lands with the force of a meteor, his claws digging into the earth. The clearing erupts in a cloud of dust and power, the fight far from over. Leyon's monstrous form towers over the mercenary, a shadow of pure instinct. His glowing red eye locks onto his opponent, the beast now fully in control. Baxter stands his ground, his enchanted blade the only light against the darkness. He notes that even lost to rage, Leyon instinctively moved the fight outdoors. The half-blood explodes forward, a blur of speed and unrestrained power. But Baxter meets the charge, his mind racing to understand the monster's intent. He nimbly dodges a wild swing, realizing this isn't just a mindless attack. The mercenary weaves through the flurry of blows, a desperate dance with death. He screams at the beast, asking if he realizes his rampage is a threat to his own mother. But his words fall on deaf ears. The monster only knows rage and violence. Leyon's monstrous form is a whirlwind of shadows and unrestrained fury. His glowing red eye meets the cold blue light of Baxter's enchanted blade. But as Baxter parries, he sees something impossible in the monster's stance. The half-blood isn't just attacking, he's perfectly mimicking Baxter's own movements. In a single glance, Leyon has copied the mercenary's entire fighting style. Talk about a quick study. Suddenly, a massive piece of the shattered grave marker is hurled through the air. It crashes down near Tylok, who can only watch in stunned silence. The berserker curses Baxter's name, his pride as shattered as his bones. He looks up from the ground, his confusion growing with every passing second. And standing over him is Leyon's mother, her expression a mask of cold resolve. Her expression is unreadable, a silent command cutting through the chaos. Suddenly, a wave of calming energy erupts from Leyon's chest. The blast throws the half-blood back, his monstrous charge completely broken. As the blue light fades, Leyon stares at his own hands, the rage receding. Baxter lowers his sword, his analytical gaze piecing the puzzle together. He tells Leyon he's seen enough, impressed by his ability to copy and counter. He notes that Leyon did all this while lost in a blind, instinctual rampage. But he reveals a glowing pendant, the true source of Leyon's salvation. Baxter marvels at the artifact's power to pacify a creature of such fury. Guess every rampaging half-ogre needs a magical leash. He realizes it was his mother's doing, calling her truly remarkable for controlling such a beast. The monstrous haze clears, and Leyon can only stare, realizing his mistake. His mother explains that as a member of the Kincaid family, she knows this danger well. Baxter offers a sincere apology, admitting he'd never seen a case like Leyon's before. He sees now that Leyon is not a weapon, but a child with remarkable control. His mother's voice finally cuts through the fog, calling him back to himself. The monster recedes, leaving only the terrified eyes of a boy who lost control. She reaches out, a gesture of comfort for her frightened son. She tells him it's over, urging him to come inside and rest. The giant walks toward his mother, a child seeking solace after a nightmare. He collapses into her arms, the fearsome ogre finding refuge with his human mother. The monster weeps, the terrified boy within crying out for his mother. The night settles over the wreckage, a silent testament to the power unleashed. Splintered wood is all that remains of their once peaceful home. Elsewhere, Tyluk the Berserker finally stirs from his impromptu flight. He can only curse the pain, his body as broken as his formidable pride. His words hang in the air as the long, violent night finally comes to an end. A new day dawns over the vast, unforgiving forest, and with the morning light, a sense of calm returns to the small cabin on the hill. Inside, a meal is prepared, a simple act of mending after a night of chaos. A warm stew is served, a quiet offering of peace and a new beginning. Leyon's mother carefully prepares the stew, her focus absolute. She serves the simple meal, an offering of peace after the storm. A full breakfast is laid out, a silent apology for the night's chaos. Her expression is weary, carrying the heavy weight of her son's burden. We see her in a quiet moment, lost in the pages of an ancient text.
Time passes and the morning sun breaks through the forest canopy.
Our story shifts to a new face, an orc-blooded man with watchful eyes. He stands alone in a clearing, axe in hand, a silent guardian of the woods. But his solitude is broken by a group of travelers, and he's clearly not thrilled. One of his companions questions their long, winding route through the forest. The orc-blooded man explains the detour isn't just about avoiding danger. He kneels, his hand resting on the axe he knows so well. He claims the forest itself speaks to him, guiding their path. His eyes scan the trees, sensing things the others cannot. He stands as a solitary figure against the vast, sun-drenched woods. He assures them that once they clear this section, the path will be safe. But one of the merchants thinks their guide is being a bit too cautious. The morning sun continues its slow climb into the sky. We see the Faren Trading Company again, now on their return journey. And it seems Tyluk learned a valuable lesson. Don't mouth off to a half-ogre. Faren celebrates their successful trade, their packs now significantly lighter. Tyluk, still nursing his wounds, grumbles about paying them for their escort. The group continues their journey, trekking through the dense forest floor. And their guide for the return trip is none other than Leyon himself. His half-blood features are on full display as he confidently leads the way. He cheerfully calls out to Baxter, who has apparently been promoted to uncle. Baxter, ever the stoic, seems to question the sudden change in demeanor. But Leyon is all business, assuring them he can sense the city is close. The news brings a wave of relief to the exhausted merchants. Baxter shows some rare concern, asking if Leyon is tired after rebuilding his home. Leyon admits he's been thinking about Baxter's stories of adventure and the city. Baxter finds it odd, but Leyon explains his mother and the villagers avoided such topics. Faren suggests they were just protecting a naive kid from the harsh realities of the world. Leyon seems particularly taken with Faren's tales of rising from nothing through haggling. He asks if he'd be good at it, much to the mercenary's silent, weary regret. But Baxter's tone turns serious, asking if the chief is the one keeping him in the village. Leyon clarifies that while he enjoys the stories, staying has always been his own choice. He wonders if the village walls were built not just for protection, but also for him. After all, Faren is the only place where his monstrous appearance is completely accepted. Baxter listens, his gaze intense as he considers the half-blood, self-imposed exile. He explains that his mother lives a quiet, solitary life in the village. A life of isolation she chose after he was born, because giving birth to a half-ogre left her unable to walk for life.
He admits he only learned of her noble past from the other villagers.
And because of her sacrifice, he feels bound to stay by her side. Faren tries to lighten the mood by joking about Leyon's diet. It does not work. But Baxter cuts straight through the awkwardness, grabbing the merchant for emphasis. He asks if their meeting was truly a coincidence, or if Leyon was watching their route. The accusation leaves the clueless merchant completely stunned. But Leyon's knowing silence suggests their chance encounter was anything but. Leyon stammers, trying to play it off as a coincidence, but Baxter sees right through him. Faren admits he's grateful for the rescue, but his tone suggests there's a catch. Baxter warns that if this was a secret mission, things could get very complicated. Our story shifts back to the orc-blooded guide, who insists this isn't about war. He explains that orc bandits used to plague the forest surrounding his village. Though few in number, their raiding parties were a serious threat to travelers. Their constant attacks choked off trade, threatening the village's very survival. The hooded man realizes the guide was marking his territory to ward off the bandits, a very alpha move. But then one day, the orc simply vanished from the forest without a trace. He speculates that the village's defenses might have finally driven them away for good. He reveals the biggest deterrent was his own presence as a forest ogre. The hooded man questions if this was all just to protect the village's reputation, but the guide denies it, explaining there was another, more pressing reason. He reveals the orcs have been engaging in suspicious activity, like taming other monsters. They've even been altering the very geography of the forest itself. He can hear the forest's urgent warnings, a sign that the danger is growing. But he reassures them, confident in his ability to handle whatever comes next. He promises to personally deal with any threat that dares to show itself. Casually. Just then, the city of Leyon comes into view, their long journey finally nearing its end. The guide announces their arrival, congratulating the weary travelers on their hard work. The orc-blooded guide from the other group is revealed to be a man named Leyon. The hooded man offers his gratitude, calling their meeting a valuable connection. Faren agrees, hoping Leyon's dream of seeing the world finally comes true. Leyon can only hope that such an opportunity will one day present itself. Faren suggests he could join a traveling troupe like the famous Noonie Circus. The idea excites Leyon, but Faren's surprise at his knowledge earns him a playful shout. But the time for talk is over as they prepare to part ways. From the edge of the forest, Leyon waves goodbye to his newfound friends. A quiet melancholy settles over him as he watches them disappear. He's had a taste of the outside world, and now he's left alone with his thoughts. But as he turns to leave, a single thought weighs heavily on his mind. He wonders if the village will truly be safe without him there to protect it. A shadow passes over his face, a flicker of the beast that lies within. Suddenly, a sound from the deep woods snaps him back to reality. A wry smile crosses his face. It seems he's not as alone as he thought. He crouches low, a predator sensing a familiar presence in his territory, and in a flash of blue light, a blade cuts through the air, announcing a visitor. Our story then flashes back 8 years, to a quieter time in Faren village. We see a much younger Leyon, his eyes wide with childhood innocence. The village chief sits with the boy, asking a simple question about his age. The chief marvels at how much the 5-year-old has grown. He jokes that for a 5-year-old, Leyon is already the size of a 10-year-old. Meanwhile, his mother, Leonia, was a force of nature in her own right. The chief mentions that Leonia has begun her preparations. He ruffles the boy's hair, a simple gesture of affection. The chief admits that looking at Leyon reminds him of his own past. He recalls fleeing into this forest after losing everything to nobles and knights. Sunlight filters through the trees, marking a new, uncertain chapter. He was just a boy then, alone and hiding in the unforgiving wilderness. And from the shadows, he first laid eyes on the sanctuary that would become his home. He recalls being only 10 years old when he first arrived in these woods. He was taken in by a kind stranger, a boy with pointed ears and an empty stomach. The man told him this village was the only sanctuary for people like them, a place built for those who had been cast out by the rest of the world, because everyone who lived here was bound by a shared history of pain. But our story shifts to another time, under a sky burning with an unnatural fire. An orc-blooded villager senses the disturbance, his instincts screaming of danger. He looks toward the village, wondering what could cause such a phenomenon. Stranger still, the surrounding forest is completely devoid of monsters. A horrifying realization dawns, and he screams out for his mother. His eyes burn with a fierce protective instinct. His mind races back to his home, a place he must protect at all costs. A wave of relief washes over him. The danger hasn't reached the village yet. But his relief is short-lived as a new, terrible thought takes hold. He stands amidst the flames, realizing this is no ordinary forest fire. He sniffs the air, his keen senses picking up a strange, unnatural scent. His expression shifts from concern to outright confusion. The fire rages, but it's the smell that puts him on high alert. He realizes the fire was set deliberately, its scent masked by incense. He knows this is a targeted attack, and he must race back to warn the others. The villager's name is confirmed as Leyon, and his eyes widen with dawning horror. He whips around, the unnatural fire confirming his worst fears have come true. The forest floor is a hellscape of flames, embers, and spent arrows. He finds a fallen villager, a man named Nelson, mortally wounded and bleeding out. The dying man struggles to speak, his last words meant only for the boy. Nelson curses his own weakness, his gaze fixed on the shadowy figure of their attacker. Leyon rushes to his side, desperate to help the man he calls his uncle. He pleads with Nelson to hold on, promising to get him back to the village for help. But Nelson knows his time is short and instead offers a final urgent warning. He tells Leyon that no matter what he finds back home, he must not lose his sanity. You know, standard, have a nice day stuff. With his final warning delivered, Nelson's hand falls limp to the ground. Leyon is left alone in the burning forest, the man's final words echoing in his mind. The weight of the world crashes down on the young half-blood's shoulders. He rises to his feet, a storm of grief and fury brewing within him. Even the wildlife seems to be heralding the tragedy unfolding below. His human features begin to twist, the ogre blood boiling to the surface. His mind flashes back to a simpler time, a memory of the chief's kindness. But his grief is shattered by the sight of a cold blue eye watching from the shadows. The attackers step forward, their movements swift and professional. Apparently they don't do monologues. A line of archers emerges from the smoke, their arrows aimed at the boy. But the village is far from defenseless as archers line the walls ready for battle. Below them, a horde of monsters surges forward, a tide of muscle and rage. They raise their ladders, determined to breach the village's formidable defenses. Their leader, a man named Ken, gives the order to fire, his voice cutting through the chaos. He commands them to target the trolls first, the muscle behind the assault. The men draw their bows, a silent promise of the death they're about to rain down. But Ken can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. These aren't just bandits. Suddenly, a scout cries out, his voice trembling as he points into the horde. Beyond the initial wave of grunts and cannon fodder, a true commander emerges, a harbinger of a much more organized slaughter. A monstrous, three-headed warg emerges, its red eyes burning with malice. Ken's hardened gaze locks onto the beast, his instincts screaming of a new threat. And atop it sits their commander, a battle-scarred orc with an unnerving calm. His single glowing eye cuts through the smoke, a harbinger of the slaughter to come. He is a figure of pure authority, a general leading a disciplined and terrifying army. The horde stands ready, a dark tide about to crash against the village's defenses. Ken can't believe his eyes. This is no common orc, and it has tamed a legendary beast. The horrifying truth dawns on him. This is an Uruk, a veteran of the Great Wars. So much for a quiet night. He turns to his men, warning them that this is no simple raid, but a declaration of war. But before he can finish, a single devastating shot pierces his chest, silencing their leader. The battle on the walls turns into a slaughter as a gruesome weapon finds its mark. The attackers send a clear message, using a fallen comrade as a gruesome banner. Ken struggles against the poison, warning his men of the orc's tainted blades. From his monstrous mount, the Uruk commander watches the chaos with cold satisfaction. He gives a silent command, ready to unleash the next phase of his assault. His demand is clear. He wants them to send out their ogre. Apparently, the invitation got lost in the mail. The horde swarms the walls, their ladders a bridge to the village's destruction. From the watchtowers, the defenders desperately try to push back the ladders. But the enemy is relentless, pouring over the defenses in a wave of steel. Ken roars for all units to hold the line, his will unbroken even as his body fails. The defenders on the wall prepare to unleash a volley of arrows. With a final command, the order is given to fire upon the horde below. A storm of arrows rains down from the walls, a desperate first strike. The volley cuts through the air, a wave of death aimed at the invaders. But the Uruk commander seems almost impressed by their marksmanship. On the wall, a veteran crossbowman takes careful, deliberate aim. His bolt finds its mark, a brutal counter to the enemy's advance. Another shot lands true, silencing one of the enemy's shamans for good. Guess his magic didn't see that coming. The crossbowman's expression is grim. This is just the beginning of the fight. The Uruk's face is splattered with blood, his surprise turning to cold fury. The Uruk's surprise quickly hardens into a cold, calculated fury. He raises a hand, signaling a change in tactics to his waiting army. On the wall, the defenders find an arrow that carries not death, but a message. One of the men carefully unrolls the crumpled paper, revealing a letter. But the writing isn't in the crude orc tongue, it's in the common human language. Below, the true purpose of the message becomes horrifyingly clear. The orcs march forward, parading a line of chained and beaten prisoners. The defenders can only watch, their crossbows useless against this new development. Ken tries to rally his men, but a scout's panicked voice cuts through the chaos. He recognizes the faces of the hostages. They're the village's own missing scouts. The crossbowman recognizes one of the hostages, a man named Daryl. Ken screams for his men to hold their fire, realizing the orcs are using human shields. His face contorts in horror, trapped in an impossible choice. The Uruk commander stands behind the line of prisoners, a master of psychological warfare. The defenders recognize more faces, friends, neighbors, and even their own children. A scout warns that the horde is now converging on the main gate. Ken grits his teeth, forced to make a decision that will cost lives. But before he can give the order, a figure leaps from the wall. A small group of defenders charges out, ready to meet the enemy head-on. Their leader screams for them to hold the line, knowing the entire village's fate rests on their shoulders. The small band of defenders braces for impact, their shields a flimsy barrier. Their leader screams in frustration, realizing they're now trapped outside the very gate they were meant to defend. He questions how they could have missed this, how an enemy this organized went completely unnoticed. This isn't a mindless horde. He knows now that these invaders have a specific, terrifying purpose. And that purpose arrives in the form of a massive, flaming battering ram. Because, of course, they have one of those. The colossal log swings forward, a promise of the destruction about to be unleashed. Inside, the remaining villagers throw their weight against the gate, a last desperate stand. But their strength is failing, the wood groaning under the relentless assault. The Uruk commander watches, a patient predator waiting for the walls to crumble. His soldiers admire their handiwork, knowing the tools of war will soon grant them victory. The Uruk commander smirks, promising to aid in a hunt he seems to be enjoying immensely. The siege rages on, a desperate battle against the village's last line of defense. Outside the walls, the trapped defenders face their end, their faces etched with grim acceptance. On the wall, the remaining men urge their wounded leader to make a choice, any choice. But Ken is paralyzed, the poison in his veins nothing compared to the agony in his heart. Because among the hostages is his own son, calling out for a father who cannot save him. His men try to reason with him, arguing that one life must be sacrificed for the many. Ken remains silent, crushed by the impossible weight of his command. He finally gives the order to fire, but admits he cannot be the one to kill his own child. His men accept the terrible burden, their eyes filled with sorrow for the choice their leader was forced to make. The archers draw their bows, their faces grim as they prepare to carry out the terrible order. Below, the Uruk commander watches, using the captured villagers as a perfect human shield. But back in the burning forest, Leyon's grief gives way to a monstrous, unholy rage. He lets out a roar of pure anguish, the beast within him finally breaking free. He grabs the fallen villager's axe, his fury now focused on a single purpose: revenge. The Uruk commander looks up in shock as a figure soars through the smoke and flames. Leyon lands with the force of a meteor, his first strike a devastating blow. But the commander only smiles, revealing this was his plan all along, to draw out the ogre. The impact sends a shockwave through the horde, a crater forming where he lands. Orcs are thrown like rag dolls, their ranks completely shattered by the half-blood's arrival. The archers on the wall can only stare, their grim task suddenly interrupted. Leyon becomes a whirlwind of destruction, his axe carving a path through the horde. The defenders recognize their village's protector, their shock mixing with a flicker of hope. But the Uruk commander and his forces simply watch, their expressions unnervingly calm. He confirms that his prey has finally taken the bait, just as he had planned. With a cruel smirk, he wonders what the half-blood will do now that he's trapped. Leyon stands frozen, realizing the hostages are still caught in the middle of this fight. In a flash of brutal speed, the Uruk commander cuts down one of the prisoners. Leyon is showered in blood, forced to watch the cold-blooded execution up close. Apparently, negotiations are off the table. The boy, Ken's son, calls out Leyon's name with his final ragged breath. Leyon's eyes widen in horror, recognizing the fallen boy as a friend. The Uruk commander's grin is a mask of blood and pure, unadulterated evil. A guttural roar tears from Leyon's throat, the sound of a heart breaking. The boy's humanity shatters, replaced by the raw fury of the beast within. The young boy's life bleeds out into the dirt, a sacrifice to the Uruk's cruelty. Leyon scoops up another hostage, a desperate attempt to prevent another murder. But the commander only watches, his amusement growing with every passing second. The half-blood stands alone, a single point of rage in a sea of enemies. With a flash of steel, the Uruk commander finally makes his move. Guess he's tired of the opening act. And Leyon meets the charge head-on, his grief now forged into a weapon. The Uruk commander's grin widens, his red eye burning with sadistic glee. Leyon becomes a blur of pure rage, his axe a bloody extension of his will. His blade finds its mark, drawing first blood in this brutal duel. But the commander is shocked, recognizing the boy's move as a knight's technique. Leyon presses the attack, a whirlwind of grief-fueled destruction. The Uruk's amusement vanishes, replaced by a cold, predatory focus. Steel meets steel as the two warriors trade devastating blows. But our boy is fighting on pure instinct now, the ogre blood in full control. The Uruk stands over a fallen villager, a cruel taunt to the rampaging half-blood. His blade finds the earth, a grim punctuation mark at the end of a life. Leyon stumbles, his body pierced by the commander's brutal counterattack. The Uruk admits his full-power strike was meant to kill, but it wasn't enough. But the rage in Leyon's eyes is replaced by a cold blue focus. The commander taunts him, asking if he's enjoying his first taste of real pain. He screams in frustration, demanding to know what kind of monster stands before him. Leyon answers with action, exploding forward in another furious charge. The Uruk barely dodges a devastating kick meant to shatter his skull, but the veteran warrior only laughs, thrilled by this unexpected challenge. From the shadows, Leyon's eye glows with a familiar predatory light. He brings his fist down with the force of a falling mountain. The Uruk commander is sent flying, a testament to the boy's raw power. But he lands on his feet, admitting he expected nothing less from his prey. Leyon's grip tightens on his axe, his knuckles white with unyielding fury. The half-blood pants, his body screaming as he pushes past his physical limits. The commander admits the boy's strength and talent are far beyond his own. So he unleashes a new weapon, a vicious spiked chain whip. The chain finds its mark, wrapping around Leyon and digging deep into his flesh. But instead of crying out, Leyon's eyes burn with that same cold blue light. He yanks on the chain, pulling the stunned commander in for a closer look. Guess that plan backfired spectacularly. The commander's own weapon becomes the chain that binds him to his fate. Leyon strains against the spiked chains, his muscles screaming in protest. A roar of pure, unadulterated agony tears from his throat. The commander explains this trap is strong enough to hold a troll, but he knows it won't be enough. But the pain only seems to focus him, his rage simmering into a low, predatory hiss. The Uruk taunts the boy, promising this is only the beginning of his suffering. He gives a signal, ready to unleash the next stage of his cruel lesson. All the while, the remaining hostages can only watch the horror unfold. One of them looks up, his face a mask of blood and disbelief. He recognizes the monster, whispering Leyon's name into the chaos. So much for a secret identity. The commander moves among them, a predator enjoying the fear of his captured prey. The commander taunts the boy, asking if humans are now just livestock for monsters like him. He paints a grim picture of a helpless victim, begging a monster for a salvation that will never come. But his words only stoke the flames, Leyon's face twisting into a mask of pure, unholy rage. The Uruk commander's grin widens, clearly enjoying this masterclass in psychological warfare. Leyon strains against the chains, his power useless as a hostage calls his name in despair. The commander twists the knife, telling the villager how painful it must be to watch his master die. He mocks Leyon's humanity, calling it a weakness that his monstrous form can never truly hide. The Uruk's final taunt hangs in the air, a direct challenge to the boy's very nature. But the time for talk is over as the orcs prepare to execute another prisoner. Guess it's bring your hostage to work day. The two warriors lock eyes, a silent promise of the brutal violence yet to come. But the Uruk's words have the opposite effect, as Leyon's blue eye clears with cold purpose. The orcs pull on the chain, its spiked links tightening around the half-blood's body. The barbs dig deep, a trap designed to shred muscle and break a monster's will. But Leyon meets the commander's next strike, his rage now forged into a razor's edge. The Uruk vows to strip away his humanity, leaving only a mindless beast behind. Leyon's hand clenches, channeling the agony of the chains into raw, unyielding strength. He explodes forward, a blur of motion that defies the chains binding him. The half-blood moves with a predator's grace, turning his pain into a weapon. For the first time, the Uruk commander's confidence wavers in the face of this assault. His grip tightens on his blade, realizing this boy is far more than just a simple monster. The remaining hostages can only watch, their faces masks of pure terror. But Leyon stands firm, the chains digging deeper as a strange power awakens. A memory cuts through the rage, a final warning from a fallen friend. Nelson's last words echo in his mind, a plea to not lose himself to the beast. The Uruk commander seems impressed, recognizing the power of a true ogre. He explains that the scent of human blood only fuels their ferocity. It's a trait that turns them into mindless, unstoppable killing machines. He demands to know what kind of monster would go to such lengths for humans. The commander smirks, asking if Leyon can feel the battlefield's energy. He describes the scent of blood trying to push our boy over the edge. Standard villain stuff. But Leon's eyes burn with a cold blue light as he finally answers. He reveals a shocking truth. He's a mixed blood, just like the commander. On the walls, the defenders can only watch this strange duel unfold. Their bows are drawn, but their part in this fight seems to be over. The Uruk continues his taunt, wondering why they'd raise a half-blood here. Leyon can only pant, the revelation hanging heavy in the air. The commander stands over him, a patient predator with a chilling question. He asks why a creature with such a valuable head has been left alone until now. This is the Uruk of the Wastelands, a veteran of countless battles. He asks if Leyon has ever wondered why no one came for him sooner. Looks like our boy's quiet life was never a secret. He speaks of the barren lands of Truvania, once a crucible of racial wars. From that conflict, a new breed of warrior was born, half human and half orc. They were masters of combat, command, and the brutal art of guerrilla warfare. But their creation was a secret of lost shamanic arts, making them exceedingly rare. When the Great Wars ended, these legendary soldiers found themselves without purpose or coin. So they turned their skills to hunting, taking on the deadliest beasts to survive. A solid retirement plan. They became a small, tight-knit clan, wandering the desolate wastelands. The Uruk commander was their leader, a warrior forged in the harshest of fires. But even legends can fall, and one hunt ended in a flash of blood and pain. He stood his ground even as a colossal beast descended to claim its prize. The beast was a titan of rock and rage, a true apex predator. As guardians of their territory, the Uruk clan had stumbled upon a true monster. The commander was lifted effortlessly, his strength nothing against the beasts. They had encountered the legendary ogre, the slaughterer of the central continent. The Uruk and his clan of elite hunters stood ready to fight for their lives. They faced the behemoth head-on, a desperate battle for survival. The battle raged under the cold light of the moon, a clash of legends. But unfortunately for the hunters, their legend was about to come to a bloody end. When the dust settled, only one individual was left standing. Falling. The Uruk commander was the sole survivor, broken and defeated by the ogre's might. He was the only one who survived that day, the last of his kind. And so the name Uruk, once a title for a race, became the name of a single man. For years after his defeat, he wandered the vast and lonely forests. With only his loyal beast at his side, he nursed a burning, singular hatred. He rebuilt his strength, gathering what few followers he could find in the wastes. And for all that time, the survivor has been watching a certain remote village. He observed the quiet forest in the kingdom of Arnia, a place of false peace. He was waiting for the perfect moment to exact revenge on his enemy's child. Back in the present, the Uruk commander clicks his tongue, his patience finally at an end. He orders his men to press the attack, to give the half-blood no room to breathe. The Uruk soldiers swarm forward, ordered to overwhelm the boy with sheer numbers. But Leyon becomes a maelstrom of violence, cutting a bloody path through the horde. The commander calls for specific formations, tactics designed to take down a troll. A roar of pure animalistic fury tears from Leyon's throat. The Uruk commander watches the slaughter, his expression unreadable. Even his own men begin to question the plan, seeing their kin fall uselessly. But their leader's gaze remains fixed on the village walls, his true objective. On the ramparts, the defenders can only watch the chaos unfold below. Ken stares in disbelief, witnessing the power of their village's hidden protector. A scout reports the entire horde is now focused on Leyon, leaving the boy to fight alone. Ken can only whisper Leyon's name, watching the boy become a one-man army. The Uruk's men try to restrain him with the spiked chain, a futile effort. But the pain only fuels his rage, the beast within him fully awakened. He slams his axe into the earth, a defiant anchor against the horde. His eyes burn with a cold blue fire, his humanity all but gone. But a new player enters the fray, a white-haired warrior descending from above. The stranger's blade meets Leyon's axe in a shower of sparks and fury. The attacker's face is a mask of grim determination, a hunter with a single target. The two are locked in a brutal stalemate, surrounded by a sea of enemies. This new warrior seems to be the Uruk's true ace in the hole. Leyon's fury meets the stranger's steel, a brutal clash of power. The attacker's face is showered in blood, but his eyes show no fear. In fact, he seems to be enjoying it, a twisted grin spreading across his face. He lets out a feral roar, matching the half-blood's own battle lust. But Leyon's power is absolute, a single swing sending the warrior flying. The Uruk's champion is launched through the air like a broken doll. He crashes to the ground in a brutal spray of blood and shattered earth. Leyon stands over his fallen opponent, a titan of pure, unrestrained rage. So much for the Uruk's secret weapon. The warrior admits his sacrifice was worth it, just to witness Leyon's power. But the fight has taken its toll, leaving our boy panting and on the verge of collapse. The Uruk commander reveals the final cruel twist of his plan. He tells Leyon that his true, monstrous nature is about to awaken. The commander explains that when this form awakens, it will be unstoppable. Even the Uruk's champion can only smile in death, having witnessed such power. His words echo as Leyon's suppressed ogre form finally breaks free. The Uruk's own men now flee in terror, realizing the monster they've unleashed. He stands alone in a crater of his own making, a true force of nature. The Uruk taunts that everyone who has ever protected Leyon, the very people of his village, will now see the horrifying truth. They will witness his true nature and be utterly terrified. Leyon's true ogre form is unleashed, a titan of raw, destructive power. But even in his rage, tears stream down his face, a boy trapped inside a monster. He whips around, a blur of grief and unrestrained fury. The Uruk's final words echo, a promise that this power will leave him utterly alone. A final guttural roar tears from his throat, a sound of pure anguish. From the walls, the villagers can only watch in horror at the monster he's become. He stands as a force of nature, the very protector they now fear. Even the orcs realize their commander's gambit has backfired spectacularly. He stands alone in the center of the carnage, a solitary god of war. And beyond the battlefield, the village stands as a silent, terrified witness. In the aftermath, the villagers tend to their fallen, the battlefield littered with the casualties of war. The village walls stand silent against a sky still burning from the recent conflict. From the ramparts, the defenders can only whisper Leyon's name, horrified by what they witnessed. They find him unconscious on the ground, his monstrous form gone, leaving only a broken boy. Ken confirms he's alive, but struggles to reconcile the child he knew with the beast he just saw. One of his men recalls how Leyon withstood countless blows with his bare body. He points out the boy's impossible healing rate, questioning if he's truly an ogre after all. Ken's expression hardens, the grim reality of their protector's power sinking in. They wonder if he'll wake, knowing the orc poison can fell even a troll. But a wounded survivor scoffs, suggesting they question her instead of waking the monster. The villagers stand over the defeated Uruk commander, debating whether to finish him off. But the Uruk is already dying, claiming he has no reason to lie. Standard villain post-game lobby chat. Ken's men warn him not to listen, but he presses on with his questions. He points out the letter was in human tongue, a clear sign it was meant for Leyon. He can't understand the motive since Leyon has never once left this forest. He demands to know why the boy was targeted, what connection he could possibly have. The Uruk smirks, claiming his revenge is complete now that they've seen Leyon's true form. He reveals their biggest mistake was thinking they could ever truly hide the boy. He mocks their giant barrier, a symbol of their willful ignorance. Because while they were hiding, something else was watching from the shadows. The Uruk reveals that Leyon's father, the slaughterer of the central continent, had begun rampaging again. But this time, there were whispers of a new power pulling the strings, a legendary blue dragon. The news sends a shockwave through Ken and his men. A blue dragon is a world-ending threat. The Uruk taunts Ken, reminding him of the basic, brutal nature of ogres. He explains that a true ogre would fight to the death, never showing weakness or restraint. But Leyon's father was different, especially when he found a certain human woman. For a beast of pure slaughter to show restraint, to choose submission, it was unthinkable. And it was this very contradiction that sparked the Uruk's years-long obsession. He lies defeated, his life's purpose fulfilled now that the village knows the truth about their protector. Because he knows that this entire tragedy, this cycle of violence, began with her. Ken struggles to process the Uruk's words, unable to believe what he's hearing. The Uruk reveals that the slaughterer's scent was imprinted on him during their battle. This scent made him the only one who could track the ogre's lineage. He gathered orcs, turning the forest into a hunting ground to draw Leyon out. He mocks their efforts to create a maze-like forest to hide the boy. He scoffs at their belief that their formidable barrier could ever truly protect them. Ken realizes their defenses were useless against a threat that was already inside. The Uruk laughs, mocking them for hiding the boy until his power grew beyond their control. He admits that perhaps his true motive was never about simple revenge. It was about witnessing that same overwhelming power one last time. He wonders if his true goal was to make Leyon an outcast, just like him. Back in the village, a pair of eyes slowly blinks open. Leyon awakens to the sound of hushed, worried voices just outside his room. A familiar face peers down, checking to see if the village's protector is awake. His expression is a mix of relief and the lingering fear from the battle. The village elders debate his fate, weighing his mother's teachings against his monstrous nature. They question if they can ever truly control him now that his power has awakened. And from his bed, Leyon hears every word, a single tear tracing a path down his face. The chief admits that without Leyon, the Uruk's army would have destroyed them all. But he can't shake the fear of what might happen if that power is ever turned on them. From his bed, Leyon overhears their debate about the danger he represents. The elders argue that protecting him could put the entire village at risk. But Ken is haunted by his son's death, vowing not to fail the village again. They realize if the Uruk's words are true, dragon hunters will soon be at their door. So much for a quiet retirement village. The chief reminds Ken that Leyon is just a boy who never asked for this power. He pleads with the elder to remember his duty and not let fear guide him. But Ken's fear explodes into a desperate plea, silenced by the chief's warning. Too late. The boy has heard everything, his heart breaking in the silence. He watches the villagers tend to the wounded, blaming himself for the conflict. He believes his rampage is the reason the elders are now fighting amongst themselves. His eyes are filled with a single haunting question. Why did he lose control? He sees his reflection, the face of the monster, and rejects his father's legacy. The elders' debate is cut short by a sudden sound from the boy's room. They find him on the floor, his only concern being the monster he's become. As the long night continues, a quiet understanding settles over the village. Leyon stands outside, assuring the chief that his monstrous body is already healing. He admits he hasn't told his mother everything, but the chief understands the delay. The chief tells him that no matter what the others say, he is proud of him. Leyon can only offer a quiet, pained agreement, the weight of his actions still heavy. The chief gives him an antidote, a final act of care for their troubled protector. Leyon announces he's returning to his mother, his voice heavy with the night's events. The chief can only watch him go, a silent understanding passing between them. With a final, pained look, Leyon turns his back on the village he just saved. The men on the wall can only stare, their fear now mixed with a heavy silence. But as he leaves, his keen senses pick up on something in the darkness. He launches himself into the night, a shadow soaring over the forest canopy. The full moon hangs in the sky, a silent witness to the night's brutal conclusion. And elsewhere, a dark omen takes flight, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Our story shifts to a lone, elegant figure standing in a moonlit clearing. A man with golden hair and a scarred face looks up as if expecting a visitor. A mysterious, long-haired figure waits silently at the edge of the woods. A monstrous hand reaches out, its skin a familiar shade of purple. It's Leyon, a weary but relieved smile on his face as he returns home. He sees his mother standing outside and calls out to her in alarm. Leyon rushes forward, warning her that it's too dangerous to be out alone. But his mother calmly tells him to stop, to quiet his panicked heart. He vaults over the fence, desperate to get to her side. She assures him she's fine, adding that her safety isn't the real issue here. Leyon can only pant, exhausted from the battle and the worry for his mother. She turns the tables, reminding him he's the one who just charged into a war zone. Guess Mom is not impressed. Leyon recalls his final warning to Nelson, a plea that went completely unheeded. She asks if his heart wavered when he heard of Nelson's death at the barrier. His hand clenches, the memory of the battle still fresh on his skin. A memory flashes back to a time when Nelson was his mentor and friend. The memory only fuels his rage, the beast within him stirring once more. He remembers Nelson's words of praise, a father's wish for a son just like him. Back in the present, he faces his mother, the weight of that loss hanging between them. He can only apologize, admitting he caused her to worry. He admits that seeing his uncle's final moments left a deep and lasting scar. He tries to explain what Nelson meant to him, a bond she already understands. He recalls his uncle's final warning, a desperate plea to never lose control. His mother wonders what terrible truth Nelson was trying to protect him from. A vision of a monstrous ogre flashes through his mind, a beast of pure power. This is the face of his father, the slaughterer of the central continent. He pleads with his mother, asking if this monstrous ferocity is his inheritance. But she cuts him off, her voice trembling as she apologizes to her son. She breaks down completely, unable to bear the weight of their family's past. Leyon can only watch, his own pain forgotten in the face of her suffering. He rushes forward as she collapses, his only instinct to protect her. The fearsome ogre holds his mother, a son comforting the woman who gave him everything. His mother can only apologize, the weight of their shared past finally breaking her. Our story shifts to the Swearen Kingdom, in the territory of a man named Baron Bills. Here, news of a breached dragon hunt is met with cynical disbelief. The Baron scoffs at the mission, calling it a waste of time that ignores all tradition. He complains to his knight that the fools in charge don't understand profit or power. He simply can't see the financial gain in chasing a legend like the Blue Dragon. But his knight reminds him they are bound by a sacred mobilization order. The Baron calls the knight Herman his profit-minded soldier, who offers his reassurance. Herman explains they've feigned compliance, a move that has bought them some valuable time. And as the Baron predicted, this particular hunt has yielded some very extraordinary results. Herman reports his findings, confirming the existence of a human and ogre crossbreed. The Baron's eyes gleam with greed, seeing this new discovery as a profitable venture. In a hall lined with trophies, Herman assures his lord of their future success. The Baron reaches for his cup, a sinister smile playing on his lips. He tells his knight to wait, his plan for this new harvest already taking shape. But Herman has his own ambitions, vowing to add a new head to his collection. Guess he's got a thing for interior decorating. Elsewhere, Tylok the Berserker sits alone, lost in his own troubled thoughts. A hooded knight approaches him, recognizing the mercenary from the city of Leyon. But Tylok stops him in his tracks, his expression hardening with suspicion. He questions the knight's motives, refusing to be seen as some simple pushover. The hooded knight's patience is clearly wearing thin with his employers. He warns Tylok that they're being followed by at least 3 unknown figures. He confronts his contact, complaining that this swift job has already gone sideways. Tylok listens, his expression a mask of cold, simmering distrust. The armored contact seems unconcerned, taking in the sights of the city. He then issues a chilling threat, reminding them to stay in line. Standard HR procedure for mercenaries. Tylok cuts to the chase, questioning if they have the manpower to hunt an ogre in its own territory. And all the while, a silent observer watches their every move from the rooftops. The armored knight's only concern seems to be the profit waiting at the end of this hunt. As a new day dawns, the pieces for this deadly game are finally set in motion. Leyon turns his back on his past, venturing alone into the deep woods. He looks up at the sky, a quiet resolve hardening his monstrous features. His journey takes him far from home, toward the distant lights of civilization. But his thoughts are heavy, the weight of his decision settling in. He pushes aside his grief, focusing on the simple, primal need to survive. His keen senses scan the air, a predator now truly in his element. He knows he can't go back to the village, not after what they've seen. So he disappears into the vast, unforgiving wilderness. It isn't long before his hunt begins as a wild boar crosses his path. Looks like bacon's back on the menu. The hunt is over in an instant, a swift and brutal display of his power. Leyon moves with blinding speed, his eyes locked on his fleeing prey. The boar's eyes are wide with terror, knowing its time is up. A single unseen blow sends the massive beast flying through the undergrowth. It soars over the treetops, a testament to the half-blood's raw power. The boar hurtles through the air, its desperate flight about to end. Leyon admits he was never taught to hunt, a skill he's learning on the fly. His mother had tried to suppress his instincts, to raise him as a human. And now he understands why she was so afraid of what he could become. The boar crashes back to Earth, scrambling to escape its inevitable fate. But Leyon lands with the force of a cannonball, ending the chase in an instant. The boar is sent tumbling through the air, a ragdoll against his overwhelming power. Its eyes are wide with a primal terror it has never known before. And in its final moments, it sees the reflection of the true monster in these woods. Leyon realizes this instinct, this raw power, is a direct inheritance from his father. He's a natural predator, understanding the art of the hunt with terrifying speed. He knows how to wear down his prey, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. He finally admits that in this, he is truly his father's son. But the thought brings him back to his mother and the fear she always carried. He wonders if she was afraid of him or of the monster she saw reflected in his eyes. But something about her fear, about his past, still doesn't add up. Our story shifts back to Faren Forest near the kingdom of Arcadia. Tylok the Berserker recalls how this forest was once a war zone. His hooded companion questions if the monsters were trained, not wild. Tylok smirks, suggesting a full-blown racial war took place in these woods. The hooded man remains silent, his expression hidden in the shadows. But Tylok quickly dismisses it as an exaggeration, though not entirely untrue. He mentions a remote village that still attracts traders despite the danger. He reveals the recent trouble was led by a legendary Uruk from Truvania. The hooded man recognizes the name, recalling the Uruk's commander status in the old wars. Tylok finds it all very suspicious, a sinister smile playing on his lips. Tylok grins, pointing out how complicated this simple monster hunt has become. His hooded companion remains silent, his expression unreadable. The scene shifts to Herman, who is being urged onward by one of his own men. The sun climbs higher, a silent witness to the converging hunters. But their path is far from clear as they're ambushed by the forest's denizens. Herman's elite soldiers make quick work of the ambushers, their movements precise and brutal. They interrogate a survivor, who has already given them all the information they need. With the Uruk gone, the remaining orcs are scattered and leaderless. Having served his purpose, the informant is silenced with a swift, final blow. His men are impressed, admitting they underestimated the village's strategic importance. A soldier reports that Herman is now tracking the Kincaid mercenaries. The other hunters question the change of plans, wondering why they're not at the rendezvous. Tylok points toward Faren village, the source of all this new complexity. The hooded man speculates that Herman must have found a more interesting target. Regardless, they prepare to move on the village as ordered. Apparently, follow the plan is just a suggestion. Their new target is clear, the formidable walls of Faren village. And their true objective lies in a small, secluded cabin on a lonely hill. Inside, Leonia waits in the quiet darkness, a silent vigil under the stars. But her peace is shattered as she hears a sound, her senses on high alert. Outside, the forest is dark and silent, but she knows she is no longer alone. The silence of the night hangs heavy over the small, secluded cabin. Leyon finally asks the question that has haunted him, the truth about his father. His mother listens, her expression a mask of weary resignation. The weight of the past is etched on her face, a story of pain and sacrifice. Leon's fist clenches, his own rage warring with the grief in his heart. But their conversation is cut short as her eyes snap open in alarm. She turns toward the door, sensing the arrival of an unwelcome guest. Outside, Tylok screams a warning, realizing the cabin is not empty. Looks like someone didn't knock. A thunderous crash shatters the wall, splintering the night's fragile peace. The berserker stands in the wreckage, met by Leonia's calm, surprised gaze. Tylok offers a mock apology, his words dripping with pure sarcasm. Leonia's face is a mask of weary resignation. This isn't his first visit. She tells him to leave, insisting they've cut all ties with the outside world. But he continues his taunts, mocking her for choosing a monster over her noble life. His venomous words finally break through her calm, hardened exterior. The berserker then makes a formal, almost theatrical gesture of respect. He introduces himself properly, addressing the princess of the great nation of Arcadia. The blood drains from her face. Her greatest secret is finally out. As if on cue, his hooded companion steps out from the shadows. The two hunters now stand before the exiled princess, their true mission revealed. The hooded man expresses his surprise at finding royalty in such a humble place. He insists that wasting her life in this hovel is beneath her noble station. He introduces himself as Knight Herman of Soiren, urging her to return to their homeland. Leonia can only stare, her carefully constructed peace completely shattered. She questions how they even found her, insisting too much time has passed for it to matter. She argues that if the Penslot family truly cared, they would have found her years ago. But Herman reveals that while she was declared dead, the Penslot never truly gave up hope. The tension in the small cabin hangs heavy, a silent standoff between past and present. He then asks a pointed question, if she truly finds her current life unacceptable. And just like that, a candle is snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. Herman offers to clean up her dirty blood, a clear threat against her son. Meanwhile, the village of Faren rests under a blanket of stars, unaware of the danger. But outside its walls, a new group of hunters moves through the darkness. A team of elite soldiers prepares to execute their grim mission. The full moon hangs in the sky, a silent witness to the coming violence. They confirm their target's location, noting his patterns are just like a full-blooded ogre's. Their leader scoffs at the idea of communication, believing a monster is a monster, regardless of its intelligence. The hunters move deeper into the forest, their confidence unwavering. He's relieved their target isn't too human-like, making the hunt that much simpler. Emotionally. His subordinate confirms their target is just a child, roughly 13 in human years. The hunters rationalize their mission, claiming they had no choice from the start. Their leader knows Leyon will return, setting his trap near the village walls. He orders them into an ogre hunting formation, eager to impress Lord Herman. Elsewhere, Leyon finishes his meal, the primal hunt awakening something within him. He carries his kill, noting its foul smell is something his mother would hate. A memory surfaces of a villager scolding him for his questionable seasoning choices. He decides to ask for extra seasoning next time, still clinging to his old life. But his thoughts turn back to his mother and the deep worry etched on her face. He knows she won't tell him what's wrong, and he blames himself for her pain. As the full moon rises, all the players in this tragedy move toward their fate. He carries his prize, hoping this simple offering might cheer his mother up. But his predator's instincts scream as the forest suddenly comes alive. A storm of arrows cuts through the darkness, a silent, deadly greeting. The boar on his back becomes a makeshift shield, taking the brunt of the assault. Guess that's one way to tenderize the meat. He grits his teeth through the pain, his eyes glowing with a familiar fury. He rips an arrow from his shoulder, his gaze fixed on his unseen attackers. With a burst of speed, he launches himself into the trees, a shadow in the night. He hurls the boar's carcass, turning his dinner into a deadly projectile. He lands, his mind racing to understand why he's suddenly being hunted. He looks at his own hand, wondering where this new professional threat came from. He realizes the attackers masked their presence, a sign of true professionals. A horrifying thought begins to dawn on him. This isn't a random ambush, this is a targeted hunt. He scans the darkness, trying to pinpoint his unseen enemies. His rage boils over as he demands his hunters show themselves. His predator's senses finally lock onto a new presence. A hooded assassin descends from the trees, blade aimed for a killing blow. But the half-blood simply bats the blade aside, his skin like iron. He stands his ground, unimpressed by the assassin's surprise attack. Guess they'll need a bigger knife. A predatory grin spreads across his face. The hunt has officially been reversed. A second hunter strikes, his blade sinking deep into Leyon's shoulder. The half-blood grunts in pain, the beast within him refusing to yield. The assassin clings to his back, trying to drive the blade home. His blood pools on the forest floor, a grim testament to the wound. Leyon's mind screams in confusion, unable to understand the attack. He can't comprehend why his quiet life has been so violently shattered. All this time, he's done nothing but hide, avoiding this very conflict. As another hunter appears, Leyon demands to know why he's being targeted. The newcomer seems to be their leader, his expression cold and professional. Leyon can only grit his teeth, the injustice of it all fueling his rage. The hunter leader raises his sword, preparing to deliver the final blow. But Leyon's rage has been forged into a cold blue focus. He's done hiding, done being the prey. The time for running is over. Back in the cabin, Leonia's tears fall, a silent testament to her shattered peace. She stands before the two hunters, her past finally catching up to her. But her eyes burn with a defiant fire, refusing to be broken by their threats. Tylok can only mock her, finding her noble pride predictable and amusing. He sneers at her reaction, enjoying every moment of this cruel confrontation. Herman internally questions his lord's rash decision to make such a bold move. But Leonia sees through their act, wondering if all nobles are this pathetic. Guess it takes one to know one. Tylok's sneer is filled with contempt as he calls her pathetic. A vision flashes, showing Leonia standing over a fallen Tylok in the grass. She recalls the condescending looks of her past, seeing them now as empty bravado. Tylok continues his taunts, mocking her for her current broken state. But Leonia's expression hardens, a grim promise in her eyes. Her sudden shift in tone catches both mercenaries completely off guard. She finishes her thought, warning them that they're the ones who will bleed tonight. Guess the welcome wagon is officially canceled. Herman's gaze narrows, processing the unexpected threat from the exiled princess. Suddenly, his head whips around, alerted by a sound from outside. A blur of motion rips through the night, as the forest itself seems to answer her call. A monstrous figure crashes the party, its eyes glowing with a cold blue light. Herman can only stare, wondering how this beast moved so impossibly fast. The creature leaps back, a silent guardian appearing from the shadows to protect the princess. But Herman is no stranger to monsters, his gaze hardening with cold focus. The beast's glowing eyes meet the cold steel of the knight's enchanted blade. Herman lunges forward, his sword a blur of silver light aimed to kill. But the monster catches the blade with its bare hand, completely unfazed. Guess he forgot to sharpen it this morning. The knight's eyes narrow, analyzing this new, unexpected threat. He's impressed by the beast's agility, questioning its impossible movements. A wave of pure energy erupts as the knight unleashes his true power. The cabin floor splinters under the force of the knight's power. Tylok can only stare from the ground, calling the display utterly impossible. He realizes Herman's shamelessness is extraordinary. He was hiding his true strength. The berserker questions if this knight has been holding back his skills all along. He's stunned to find a true sword expert in this remote corner of the world. Guess the HR department is better than he thought. But the monstrous guardian stands firm, shielding the princess from the new threat. Herman remains unfazed, his analytical gaze sizing up his monstrous opponent. The beast's profile is a mask of pure protective instinct. Leonia calls out his name, trying to reach the boy trapped inside the monster. She orders Leyon to calm down and leave, insisting she can handle these intruders herself. But Herman is a blur of blue light, his enchanted blade ready to cut down the beast. Leyon roars in defiance, a monstrous guardian shielding his mother from the knight's power. The knight demands to know how Leyon could have possibly arrived here so quickly. He issues a final, chilling warning. His next strike will be a killing blow. But first he turns his attention to Tylok, demanding an explanation for his failure. He can't understand how a mere beast could have outmaneuvered his elite hunters. The half-blood's glowing eyes meet his, a silent challenge to the knight's authority. The scene flashes back to the Faren forest, to the ambush that just took place. We see Leyon, wounded and bleeding, but far from broken by the hunter's trap. The hunter leader claims he takes no pleasure in killing the young, professionally speaking. He notes that Leyon is only slightly smaller than a true ogre, but doesn't seem as formidable. He tells the boy that struggling is meaningless. His monstrous nature is a fate he can't escape. The hunter raises his sword, declaring that a prey's only purpose in life. But Leyon's eyes burn with a cold, defiant light, refusing to accept his words, is to be hunted down and killed. The blade descends in a flash of steel, a final killing blow, but the hunter's confident smirk vanishes, replaced by pure, dumbfounded shock. Leyon catches the blade with his bare hand, his speed defying all logic. The hunter can't comprehend the movement, his mind reeling from the sudden counter. With a grip of iron, Leyon prepares to turn this hunt completely on its head. The hunter's smirk is wiped away as Leyon's grip tightens around his blade. With a grunt of effort, Leyon shatters the steel with his bare hand. The force of the blow sends the hunter leader flying, his men screaming in terror. The hunter realizes with dawning horror that the boy predicted his every move. He can't comprehend this level of power, questioning if this is truly just a specimen. He thought the ogre's rampage would leave him mindless, but Leyon is fully in control. Another hunter charges, wondering if the drugs failed to work. Guess they needed a stronger dose. But Leyon is already in motion, a whirlwind of blue energy and pure fury. His eyes glow with a cold, analytical light, a predator in his element. The masked hunter braces for impact, his own blade ready for the clash. He moves like a phantom, a blur of blue energy cutting through the night. The hunter can only stare as Leyon's voice echoes, promising to hunt them instead. Leyon reveals he knows about the poison on the needles they used in the ambush. He knows their goal was to turn him into a mindless hunting beast. The remaining hunters can only stand their ground, their trap completely shattered. One of them notes that even the forest's echo seems to be working against them. From the shadows, Leyon's cold blue eye watches their every move. He asks what harm he's ever done to them to deserve this fate. He questions if he should just accept his nature and obediently die. He then turns the question back on them, asking if the beasts they've hunted ever had a choice. Leyon's cold voice cuts through the night, rejecting their twisted logic. The hunter can only scoff as Leyon explodes into motion, a phantom in the dark. The hunters are thrown into chaos, unable to track his impossible speed. The leader realizes Leyon is turning their own weapon against them, using the drug to create illusions. The hunter's confidence shatters as he understands the boy's terrifying strategy. A blast of energy confirms their worst fears. The prey has become the predator. One of the hunters stumbles through the haze, now completely lost in the boy's trap. He clutches his head, the hallucinogens now clouding his own senses. His own men try to snap him out of it, but the leader can't trust what he sees. But the masked hunter reveals a greater problem. Their scent-masking smoke is gone. The hunter realizes that at this rate, Leyon is heading straight for Lord Herman. He grits his teeth knowing he absolutely cannot let that happen. Because if a creature with such impossible speed manages to reach their commander, the entire mission is compromised. Leyon arrives at the cabin, his mind still reeling from the question of his own identity. But inside, Leonia seems to have decided that such distinctions no longer matter. Herman stands ready, his enchanted blade glowing with a cold, deadly light. Leon wonders what form he must take, what he must become just to survive. His mother can only watch in terror as the situation spirals out of control. Herman pins the half-blood, deciding to get answers from his captured men instead. Herman claims he was just trying to understand the beast's point of view. He then delivers a chilling command: die properly in front of your mother. He believes this final act of cruelty will finally break the princess's will. A wave of pure energy rips through the cabin, aimed to end the fight. But Leonia can only watch as her son stands as her final defiant shield. He grits his teeth, vowing that the knight will not have his way. The knight's attack is blocked, his expression hardening with annoyance. He can only mutter in disbelief at the half-blood's sheer audacity. Even Tylock complains about the knight's temper, a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black. But the berserker seems to be enjoying the chaos, a sinister grin on his face. A new figure soars through the night, a silent shadow against the moon. A glowing pendant hangs from his neck, a familiar artifact in this chaotic night. He lands with a predator's grace, confirming that everything is going according to his plan. But Herman stands his ground, his own power flaring to life in response. The knight's cold gaze narrows, processing this unexpected interruption. His hand tightens on his sword, ready to unleash a new kind of weapon. The newcomer charges, but Leonia can only watch as the knight reveals his true power. His sword extends into a massive spear, blocking the attack with ease. The weapon's true form is revealed, a glowing, three-pronged trident. Guess a sword just wasn't dramatic enough. Herman unleashes his full power, ready to end this fight once and for all. The knight erupts in a blinding flash of blue, destructive energy. The blast tears through the cabin, a shockwave of pure, unbridled power. Its light streaks across the sky, a beacon of violence in the dark forest. Miles away, the other hunters can only stare in stunned silence. One of them recognizes the energy signature of their commander, Herman. The hunter leader realizes the half-blood has finally provoked the knight's true anger. We learn that Herman, a master swordsman, always carried a spear for profit. It was a weapon looked down upon, fit only for peasant soldiers. You know, the disposable kind. But Herman saw its potential, modifying it to channel his own immense power. And the hunter knows that for Herman to draw this weapon means one thing. The hunter leader confirms Herman's position, ordering his men to move immediately. But his subordinate warns against haste, fearing the monsters that hunt in the dark. The leader snaps, furious that they've already lost their primary target. The masked hunter reminds him that Herman's wrath is far more dangerous than any beast. He realizes they have no choice but to push forward, regardless of the risk. Guess the HR department is a real killer. But elsewhere, a dark figure cuts through the night with impossible speed. A blur of motion streaks through the trees, a phantom against the moonlight. It's Leyon, soaring through the sky, his body pushed to its absolute limit. He wonders if this is the effect of the drug, his senses reeling from the fight. The world blurs around him as dizziness and confusion begin to take hold. He's moving on pure instinct, his body a blur of unrestrained motion. He questions if this raw power is his true nature, a dark gift from his father. But in the chaos, he understands the fundamental principle of the hunt. A cornered prey will always turn on its hunter. And he knows that his human pursuers are now the ones who are trapped. He unleashes a devastating blast of pure blue energy. The beast within him roars, no longer holding anything back. The hunter is caught in the blast, his attack completely overwhelmed. He's launched into the night sky, a human cannonball of pure regret. But back at the village, the aftermath of the Uruk siege still lingers. A plume of smoke rises into the night, a signal of the violence unfolding in the woods. From the village walls, the chief's eyes are fixed on the disturbance, whispering Leonia's name. His men confirm his fears. That's no cooking fire, and the night's peace has been shattered. One of them recalls Ken's warning that trouble was coming for Leyon and his mother. They question if they can truly stand by while the two are in mortal danger. But the chief reasons that if Leyon can't handle it, their own intervention would be futile. The smoke continues to rise, a silent testament to the battle raging below. The chief is torn, weighing his duty to the village against his loyalty to his friends. Another villager argues that Leonia's fate is directly tied to their own survival. His mind made up, the chief roars for weapons and lanterns, ready to march into the fray himself. The villager hesitates, but his loyalty wins out as he joins the chief's rescue party. They race through the woods, their destination marked by the distant smoke. But they're not the only ones moving through the darkness with impossible speed. A pack of monstrous wolves emerges, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The forest itself seems to come alive, a blur of shadows and predatory instinct. Meanwhile, the hunter leader arrives at the cabin, only to find his men defeated. He stands alone in the clearing, the silence a testament to his failure. His subordinate arrives, confirming the grim reality of their situation. The elite hunters can only kneel in shame, completely outmaneuvered by their prey. Guess the kid didn't read the Be a Good Victim manual. The leader realizes they weren't just outfought, they were outthought from the very beginning. The hunter leader can only bow his head, admitting their complete and utter failure. But Herman's cold gaze cuts through him, asking if he should be humiliated by their incompetence. The hunter desperately warns his lord that this target requires extreme caution. He explains that while ogres are instinct-driven, this one has human intelligence. Worse still, he's heard the beast has submitted to a human, a concept he can't grasp. He tries to save face, claiming they are merely the instruments of Herman's will. Herman seems to accept this, his glowing blade still ready for a different kind of work. He offers them a choice. Extend the hand that doesn't hold a sword. Guess the company's severance package is a bit hands-on. With that matter settled, Herman's focus shifts to the next phase of his plan. And elsewhere, the village chief and his men race through the darkness, unaware of the danger they're approaching. But their path is blocked by a new group of armed men, led by a blonde knight. One of the strangers raises his hands as if signaling an attack. The knight smirks, revealing this was no chance encounter. They were the bait. The chief's men demand to know their business, but are quickly silenced. The knight addresses the village chief directly, his question hanging in the air. Our story then flashes back to a different time, a different conflict. A younger man pleads with his lord, warning that his crippling taxes will lead to ruin, but his words fall on deaf ears in the quiet, oppressive night. He recalls a recent tragedy, a public execution meant to instill fear, a grim reminder of the price of defiance in this cruel, unforgiving land. He recalls choosing to die fighting rather than see his people enslaved. The Lord's shadow falls over the villagers, a symbol of his absolute power. The Lord accuses him of orchestrating an escape, his eyes filled with cold fury. His father had warned him that his resentment would have dire consequences. But the young man could only apologize, his path already chosen. And so, an uprising against the cruel Lord Faren was born. The rebellion was far fiercer than anyone could have predicted. But the Lord, who had remained silent, finally revealed his hand. From a glowing gate, 3 elite knights emerged to crush the revolt. Looks like the Lord came prepared. One of the knights draws a glowing blade, ready to end their desperate fight for freedom. The knight unleashes a devastating wave of pure destructive energy. The rebels can only brace themselves against the overwhelming power. They stand against a blinding light, their desperate charge brought to a halt. The young chief's face is a mask of fury, refusing to back down. But in a single brutal strike, the rebellion is torn to shreds. And the Lord responded with all the dignity you'd expect from a tyrant. The uprising had shaken the very foundations of his territory. It was the first time the people had ever dared to stand against him. But their desperate bid for freedom ended just as it began, in failure. Their leader was made an example of, a grim warning to all who would defy the Lord. He could only watch in secret as his son's body was made a public spectacle. But the Lord, in a final act of cruelty, left him his title, forcing him to serve. So when the opportunity finally came, he fled into the unforgiving wilderness. He left the land of Faren behind, vowing to build a new life for his people. But the memory of the knights who crushed his rebellion never faded. A terror embodied by a single glowing blade and the man who wielded it. A warrior who single-handedly slaughtered 400 men without taking a scratch. And now that same knight stands before the chief once again in the dead of night. His smile is cold, his glowing blade a promise of the violence to come. A grim reminder of the last time their paths crossed and the price of defiance. The chief's men cry out as he stares down the ghost of his past. His men can only watch, completely outmatched by the knight's forces. The knight explains that his master has a message for the runaway chief. And before anyone can react, the message is delivered with brutal efficiency. The chief watches in horror as his friend Den is cut down without a word. Another villager falls, the hooded soldiers moving with silent, deadly precision. He screams out in rage and grief as his men are slaughtered before his eyes. But his defiance is cut short as blades find his throat, trapping him in place. Herman calls this a proper execution, a lesson in knightly etiquette. You know, the stabby kind. With the chief's men dead, the knight offers him a special chilling opportunity. He offers a chilling choice, suggesting this is just a taste of the slaughter to come. But his words are punctuated by a sudden, blinding flash of blue light. A monstrous figure is caught in the blast, its body torn apart by the raw energy. The creature is launched into the night, a streak of violence against the full moon. The attack carves a trench through the forest floor, a testament to the knight's power. The winged beast crashes to the ground, defeated in a single, overwhelming strike. It lies broken, its monstrous features twisted in a silent scream of agony. But as its life fades, a single thought cuts through the pain. It questions if it should simply accept this fate and obediently die. But in its glowing eye, a new resolve is reflected in the pale moonlight. A monstrous hand reaches for the moon, a desperate grasp for an answer. He screams into the void, questioning what form he must take to survive. A vision of a legendary beast flashes through his mind, a symbol of raw power. It stands beside its master, a duo of pure, untamed wilderness. But Leyon roars back at his fate, refusing to be just another monster. He wonders what he must become, what he must sacrifice just to live. And in his glowing eye, a cold, hard decision is finally made. Our story shifts, revealing that ogres are a species shrouded in mystery. Elsewhere, a different kind of monster watches the moon, a sinister plan taking shape. The legendary wolf unleashes its fury, a vision of pure predatory instinct. The legendary forest wolf, a beast of pure, unbridled instinct. The scarred man explains that while powerful monsters are common, ogres are a different breed entirely, a species that defies all known patterns. They are solitary creatures, driven by a principle no one can understand. We see a vision of a legendary ogre confronting a pack of monstrous wolves. But he doesn't fight them. He turns them into his loyal subjects. The question remains, how does a single ogre dominate an entire forest? The answer lies in his cold, unwavering gaze, a king in his own right. He does it with a roar of pure, overwhelming power that bends all to his will. And this legendary beast has a direct and very personal connection to Faren village. The narrator admits there's no other way to describe the slaughtherer's nature. It can only be understood through his extreme primal expressions. A being of pure, unrestrained power, a legend in his own right. Back in the present, Herman's glowing blade is the last thing the villagers see. The chief kneels, a prisoner of the very knight who destroyed his past. With the chief as his hostage, Herman's plan moves to its next phase. But back at Faren village, the knight remains deceptively calm. A guard on the wall spots movement in the darkness, his watch suddenly interrupted. Herman approaches the village, a predator returning to a familiar hunting ground. He and his men arrive at the walls, ready to deliver their chilling message. Herman's blade hums with a cold blue energy, ready to deliver its message. He unleashes a devastating strike, a warning meant for the entire village. From the watchtower, Ken can only stare in disbelief at the display of power. The blast of energy deliberately misses the wall, a clear and terrifying warning shot. It impacts inside the village, a show of force that could have leveled everything. Ken can't believe what he's seeing, the sheer power of their new visitor. His men are ready to fight back, but Ken knows this isn't a battle they can win. He realizes the knight could have wiped them out, but chose not to. This isn't a negotiation, it's a demand for their complete and total surrender. And to drive the point home, Herman reveals his leverage, their captured village chief. Looks like the reunion tour is off to a great start. The chief can only bow his head, a pawn in the knight's cruel game. On the wall, Ken screams for them to wait, a desperate plea against the inevitable. But Herman stands below, a silent, unmoving specter of their past. Ken frantically questions his men, trying to understand how their chief was captured. He learns the chief had an escort, a detail that only deepens the mystery. He orders his men to find that escort, vowing to buy them time himself. His men plead with him, knowing a one-on-one fight is a death sentence. But Ken's mind is made up, ordering an evacuation through a secret passage. He knows that for an enemy like this, human life is just a negotiating tactic. He looks over the wreckage, cursing the impossible situation they've been forced into. Herman and his men stand before the walls, a silent promise of the violence to come. On the ramparts, Ken can only watch, his mind racing to find a way out. The Baron's words echo, a cynical lesson on the limits of will and the pursuit of profit. He questions if anyone truly rises from the bottom on their own strength alone. A memory flashes of a monstrous beast, a symbol of a challenge that couldn't be overcome. He recalls the hardships of his past, a brutal fight for survival in the wastes. He remembers that in the eyes of the powerful, a knight of lowly origins was worthless. He learned that will alone was never enough to change his fate. And only by accepting that truth could he focus on what truly mattered: profit. But Leyon grits his teeth, vowing that the knight will not have his way. Herman's eyes narrow, processing the villager's defiant words. A flash of blue light cuts through the tension, a signal of the violence to come. The knight stands unfazed, a cold confidence in his eyes. Ken steps forward, offering to handle the greetings himself. He taunts the knight, suggesting a noble wouldn't understand their brutal form of communication. But Herman sees right through it, a cruel smirk spreading across his face as he realizes Ken is just trying to buy time. He unleashes his power, his voice a roar as he questions if this desperate gambit will work. A devastating blast of energy slams into Ken, who braces for the impact. The captured chief can only scream his friend's name, forced to watch the slaughter. Ken falls to his knees, wounded but not broken, as Herman's glowing blade holds him at bay. The chief pleads for his people, offering himself as the sole sacrifice. He begs Herman to spare the village, insisting he is all the bait the knight needs. But from the wall, Ken's voice cuts through, his patience finally at an end. Herman raises his weapon, channeling a devastating amount of energy for his next strike. Ken stands his ground, bracing as the wave of power rushes toward him. The energy surrounds him, a halo of destruction meant to break his will. With a cruel smirk, Herman unleashes the full force of his attack. Guess the greetings are officially over. The blast consumes Ken, a blinding explosion of pure, destructive force. The attack finds its mark, leaving a brutal wound in its wake. But Ken remains on his knees, his eyes burning with an unbroken, defiant spirit. He kneels, a lone figure against the shadow of a dark and imposing fortress. But Herman scoffs, claiming this is just the beginning of what's needed to be enough. A cruel smile spreads across his face, his eyes glowing with sadistic power. He charges forward, explaining this is all just to properly provoke his true prey. The overwhelming wave of energy crashes down on Ken. The knight's hair flares with power as he roars his intent for this entire forest, to be completely covered in the smell of blood. Ken can only grit his teeth, his face a mask of sweat and helpless fury. The hooded soldiers move in for the kill, their blades descending on the lone defender. But the execution is interrupted by a monstrous figure with glowing blue eyes. Guess he didn't get an invitation. Herman laughs, clearly enjoying the arrival of his true target. But Leyon's eyes widen, the beast within him momentarily stunned. The knight taunts him, mocking his impatience after abandoning his mother. He unleashes another wave of energy, pressing his brutal assault. Leyon is thrown back, a lone monster against the knight's overwhelming power. Herman channels his energy, his blade humming with destructive intent. His expression is cold, a hunter preparing for the final killing blow. He leaps into the air, becoming a living storm of pure blue light. The energy explodes outward, a vortex of power meant to annihilate everything. But as the light fades, Herman can only stare, his attack having met unexpected resistance. Herman analyzes the half-blood's movements, recognizing the technique. But Leyon's glowing red eye shows only pure predatory instinct. The knight roars, mocking the boy's pathetic attempt to defy him. As the monster looms over him, Herman's expression remains cold. He charges, claiming this beast is no different from any other he's faced. He unleashes another devastating arc of pure blue energy. The attack cuts through the night, a promise of absolute destruction. But Herman can only scoff, utterly disappointed by the display. Suddenly, his confidence shatters as claws find their mark, drawing blood, and he finds himself surrounded by a pack of monstrous red-eyed wolves. Looks like the welcoming committee has arrived. The battlefield erupts in a storm of purple energy and shattered earth. Herman's men are caught in the chaos, their vision obscured by a strange vapor. One of the soldiers coughs up blood, caught completely off guard by the assault. He admits his mistake, realizing the vapor is a deliberate and blinding tactic, because the drug they used on Leyon is now being turned back against them. The elite hunters can only curse, now lost in a disorienting hallucinogenic haze. They realize with dawning horror that they've walked right into a hunting trap, and the wolves descend, turning one of the hunters into a bloody mess. Looks like the pack doesn't appreciate uninvited guests. Herman can only watch in stunned disbelief, his perfect plan completely unraveling. The hunters are now the prey, surrounded by the very beasts of the forest. The wolf tears into its prey, a brutal display of primal fury. Its eyes burn with a singular predatory focus. Herman scoffs, dismissing the beast as a mere scavenger. But his confidence is shaken, his face a mask of grim frustration. Because Leyon is now the one looming over him, a phantom of blue energy. The knight swings his massive spear, trying to clear a path through the chaos. He screams at Leyon, accusing him of playing games with his prey. He grabs one of the wolves, ready to make an example of it. Guess he's not a dog person. But his attack is blocked, his own power turned against him in the haze. And another beast lunges from the shadows, ready to tear him apart. The wolf's jaws clamp down, tearing into the hunter's shoulder, and Leyon moves through the chaos, a phantom of blue energy and pure rage. The hunter can only stare, realizing he's been caught in the beast's trap. A single devastating blow connects, shattering the soldier's defense. He's sent flying, a ragdoll against the half-blood's overwhelming power. The hunter coughs up blood, his body broken by the brutal assault. Leyon stands among his new pack, a king surveying his bloody work. He holds the last hunter aloft, a silent question in his cold gaze. Guess the performance reviews are in, and they are not good. The soldier can only laugh, questioning why the monster is doing this. But Leyon offers no answer, his glowing eyes promising only more pain. The hunter questions why Leyon didn't just kill him if this was the intended result. He realizes with dawning horror that the boy wanted to show him something more. He finally admits that Leyon is fundamentally different from any monster he's ever known. But Leon's cold blue eye offers no comfort, only a silent judgment. He answers by unleashing a devastating wave of energy, using the hunter as a weapon. The last of Herman's men is sent flying, a broken testament to Leyon's power. But Leon's expression shifts to shock as a new attack cuts through the chaos. From across the battlefield, Herman unleashes his own overwhelming wave of energy. Leyon is engulfed in the blast, forced to endure the knight's unrestrained power. But through the pain, his eyes burn with a fierce human determination. Herman grunts, his frustration growing with every passing second. But Leyon meets his charge, a monster of pure instinct against the knight's steel. A flash of blue light cuts through the haze, drawing blood from the half-blood. The force of the blow sends Leyon crashing to the ground, a brutal counter. Herman stands over the fallen wolf, his glowing blade the only light in the chaos. But Leyon looks up, his eyes burning with a surprise that quickly turns to rage. The knight taunts him, asking if a monster truly understands what it means to face a knight. He promises to teach the boy a painful lesson in the art of war. Guest class is officially in session. With a severed wolf head in hand, he vows to show Leyon his proper place. And the smoke continues to rise, a signal of the brutal lesson unfolding below. Herman can only laugh, his eyes filled with a cold, predatory amusement. He sits in the wreckage of the cabin, a king on a throne of splinters. He muses on the monster's devotion, a loyalty that drove him to flee. He deduces that Leyon's escape was an order from his own mother. He taunts her, asking if she's scared now that her protector is gone. But Leonia meets his gaze with a cold, unbroken defiance. She tells him that worrying for one's child is simply a mother's duty. She then turns the tables, demanding to know the source of his obsession. Leonia asks what she must do to finally end his hunt for her son. But Herman only scoffs, calling the former princess a pitiful sight. Looks like diplomacy is off the table. Tylok's sadistic grin fills the frame, his words dripping with venom. But Herman cuts in, saying it doesn't matter who returns from the forest. Tylok continues his taunts, blaming her monster son for her downfall. He demands to see that last spark of defiance before he extinguishes it. Leonia looks up, her spirit weary but still refusing to break. But her defiance suddenly shatters, replaced by pure, dawning shock. Herman explains that only then will he have the confidence to finally crush her noble arrogance once and for all. This guy really needs a hobby. In her eye, a reflection of a hand appears, glowing with an unknown power. A massive wave of emerald energy erupts, a power they never saw coming. The blast of emerald energy consumes the knight, catching him completely off guard. Tylok is thrown back by the force, his shock echoing through the chaos. A new warrior stands before Leonia, a green-clad protector with a deadly weapon. From the floor, Tylok can only stare in disbelief at this sudden turn of events. The protector moves with blinding speed, delivering a single devastating strike. So much for Herman's grand plan. The name Penslot hangs in the air, a clue to this newcomer's identity. But elsewhere in the forest, a new power awakens in a flash of blue light. The energy crackles and surges, a storm of pure destructive force. A blonde-haired knight appears, his grin as sharp as his electrified blade. He unleashes a devastating arc of power, ready to carve his own path through the night. Leyon stands against the knight's power, a wall of pure, defiant rage. His eyes burn with a cold blue fire, refusing to yield a single inch. The knight's voice cuts through the chaos, his eyes glowing with red-hot fury. He mocks Leyon's attempt to flee, unleashing another wave of energy. But our boy isn't running. He's charging headfirst into the storm. He channels the raw energy, his fist a conduit of pure, monstrous power. The two forces collide in a blinding explosion of blue light and shattered earth. Herman is forced to block, the ground splintering under the sheer force of the impact. The knight repositions, his own blade humming with deadly intent. The two warriors stand locked in a stalemate, the battle far from over. Leyon realizes that in this world, the cycle of hunter and hunted will never end. But as he embraces this truth, he feels a new power slipping out from within. Herman can only stare, admitting he's never seen a power quite like this before. He can't believe that a low-born half-breed could evolve so quickly. He wonders if the boy is on the path to becoming the new king of this forest. But he quickly dismisses the thought with a laugh, mocking Leyon's efforts. The knight charges forward, a blur of steel against the monster's overwhelming size. He nimbly uses Leyon's own arm as a springboard, launching himself into the air. His blade finds its mark, drawing blood and a roar of pain from the half-blood. Guess the kid's hide isn't completely impenetrable after all. Herman presses his advantage, a phantom of blue light against the wounded beast. Herman's blade cuts through the night, a storm of blue energy and raw power. The knight's grin is pure malice, enjoying every second of this brutal lesson. But Leyon endures the assault, his glowing eyes a promise of defiance. Herman unleashes another devastating arc, determined to break the half-blood. But something shifts as Leyon's eyes flash red with sudden, dawning shock. The knight's confidence wavers, sensing a change in the flow of battle. A strange, glowing red sigil appears in the air, a harbinger of a new power. A vision cuts through the chaos, a lone knight struggling against a bloody rain. The knight falls, his body broken and defeated under the crimson sky. And Leyon stands over him, questioning how a true knight could fall so easily. Herman roars from the ground, questioning what Leyon takes him for. He's furious that the half-blood would dare to spring a trap on him. But Leyon notes that even wounded, a true knight is a different breed. The knight's blade flares with energy, ready for another assault. Leyon meets his fury with a cold, predatory focus of his own. Herman lunges forward, his glowing sword aimed to cut the beast down. He unleashes a spinning arc of energy, a whirlwind of blue light. The knight sneers, mocking the half-breed mutt for daring to talk back. Classy. But Leyon taunts him back, asking if that was the best a knight could do. Herman's power flares, ready to show the boy what a real knight is. Herman sneers, calling Leyon a mere plaything from the wastelands. He unleashes a blinding wave of energy, a lesson in remembering one's place. The attack slams into Leyon, a direct hit meant to obliterate him, but his axe holds firm, a desperate shield against the knight's power. He's sent skidding back, the sheer force of the blow overwhelming. He grits his teeth, refusing to fall even as his body screams in protest. Herman's grin widens, promising to personally teach the boy a brutal lesson. His blade finds its mark, a cold line of steel against the half-blood's throat. He makes an example of one of the wolves, a brutal display of his power. The knight roars, his bloodlust now fully unleashed upon the forest. The knight's composure finally shatters, his face a mask of pure, unholy rage. Leyon meets his fury, using a fallen hunter as a gruesome makeshift club. The last of Herman's men becomes a tool of war in the half-blood's hands. He stands in a vortex of his own power, a true master of this chaotic battlefield. And as the dust settles, the true cost of this battle becomes clear. One of his pack lies broken, a casualty of the knight's indiscriminate power. On the sidelines, the chief tends to Ken, both of them helpless witnesses. His eyes widen in horror, realizing the fight has taken a grim new turn. Because in the distance, Leyon holds up his grim trophy against the dawn. Guess show and tell just got a lot darker. His glowing eye promises that this is only the beginning of the knight's punishment. Herman taunts the half-blood, questioning how a slave could challenge a true knight. But Leyon's cold blue eyes offer only a silent, chilling promise. He dismisses the threats, claiming he's already surpassed what it means to be a knight. The knight's hand trembles, his confidence completely shattered by the boy's words. A horrifying thought dawns on Herman, that this monster might be from his own homeland. Leyon's expression is grim, admitting he never wanted this fight to end this way. But Herman's rage explodes, screaming about the life he built for himself. Guess his ego is more fragile than his armor. And with a final, brutal strike, the knight's ambition comes to a bloody end. As a new day dawns, a quiet peace settles over the ruined cabin. Leonia stands in the wreckage, a silent witness to the end of a long, violent night. Leonia stands alone in the morning sun, surveying the ruins of her home. She looks up, her face a mask of weary disbelief at the night's events. But her sorrow quickly hardens into a cold, steely resolve. She turns away from the wreckage, her mind already on what comes next, a final glance back at the life that was so violently torn from her. Sunlight now streams through the splinters of her shattered sanctuary, and from the shadows a familiar monstrous hand appears. But it's not Leyon. It's a stranger in a straw hat with cold, glowing eyes. Leonia can only watch in silence as this new player enters the scene. She finally speaks, her voice filled with a mother's frustrated concern for her son. The stranger explains he couldn't act as the villagers were being used as bait. Leonia closes her eyes, the weight of the night's events pressing down on her. She asks Leyon if he was truly prepared to die for the people who'd already disowned him, but Leyon defends them, insisting their fear doesn't erase the kindness they once showed. He remembers the sanctuary they offered when no one else would. But his mother is firm, telling him their past kindness is no reason to throw his life away. The two stand in the ruins, a mother's pragmatism clashing with her son's loyalty. She warns him that after this, the villagers will surely try to abandon them for good. Guess the neighborhood watch isn't a fan of ogre-level property damage. The harsh reality of her words leaves Leyon completely stunned into silence. And so, with a heavy heart, our boy turns his back on the only home he's ever known. A vision of a long-haired warrior greets the dawn, a silent promise of a new day. The scene shifts to the chief and Ken, standing in a wasteland of jagged rock. But the chief's hardened expression shatters, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. The warrior's face is grim, a silent acceptance of the horrors he's witnessed. Back in the present, Leyon admits that perhaps his mother's harsh words are right. Leonia can only look down, the weight of her own choices pressing in on her. He agrees that to survive in this world, he must follow her lead. But her attention shifts to the stranger, asking what became of the berserker, Tylok. She explains that the mercenary simply fled when his commander didn't return. So much for professional courtesy. She places a hand on the stranger, telling him to rest and recover from the night's battle. Leyon offers to make a place for his mother to rest, a small moment of peace in the wreckage. But Leonia can only watch him, her expression a mask of silent, weary contemplation. He finally admits his true reason for fighting, a desperate plea to never be told to run away again. His words hit her with the force of a physical blow, her carefully built walls crumbling. The weight of his devotion, of his sacrifice, is almost too much for her to bear. The moon hangs over their shattered home, a silent witness to their broken peace. She gently covers her sleeping son, a mother's love unwavering even in the darkest of times. But as she looks at him, her sorrow hardens into a cold, unyielding resolve. She keeps a quiet vigil by candlelight, her mind racing with a plan that will change everything. Guess a good night's sleep is off the table for her. And Leyon sleeps, unaware that his world is about to be turned upside down once more. Leonia's expression hardens, a mother's love now forged into a grim new purpose. She clutches a glowing pendant, a relic of a past she can no longer afford to hide. With her decision made, she turns her back on the ruins of her quiet life. Meanwhile, the villagers of Faren gather around a massive bonfire. Ken and the others stand in the firelight, their faces etched with grim determination. His gaze is fixed on the flames, a silent vow burning in his eyes. Back in the village hall, the night's events weigh heavily on their leader. The chief can only rub his weary eyes, the burden of command pressing down. A heavy sigh escapes him, a sound of pure, unadulterated exhaustion. Guess being in charge isn't all it's cracked up to be. Through the window, the distant fire serves as a grim reminder of their shattered peace. Ken reminds the chief of the Uruk raid and the monster Leyon became. He admits he didn't blame the chief for his son's death thanks to Leyon's intervention, but he asks if the chief can truly guarantee that such a tragedy won't happen again. The question leaves the old chief completely speechless, his face etched with worry. Ken reminds him that in this world, attracting the attention of a knight is a death sentence. The chief can only remain silent, knowing Ken's words hold a terrible truth. But his quiet contemplation is shattered by a sudden burst of green energy. A warrior in green armor materializes, confirming that their worst fears have come true. Guess you can't have a serious meeting without a dramatic entrance. The chief recognizes the man, asking if this agent of Penslot has been watching all along. The warrior confirms he warned of this day, stating the princess's safety is now compromised. The chief asks about the mercenary, Tylok, a potential witness to their secret. But the warrior assures him that the loose end has already been tied. Guess Tylok's retirement plan just got fast-tracked. The chief's eyes widen, the implication of those words hitting him hard. He realizes this means the warrior has already made contact with Leonia. The agent of Penslot can only offer a silent, stoic confirmation, and back at the ruined cabin, the night's silence hangs heavy. While Leyon sleeps exhausted from the battle, his mother sits by candlelight, a difficult choice before her. With the family pendant beside her, she puts her final decision to paper. She keeps her vigil, writing a letter that will change both of their lives forever. She looks up at the stars, tears of sorrow tracing a path down her face. Our story shifts to the war-torn Arnia frontline, a graveyard of forgotten battles. Here, in the ruins of an old fortress, a new army has made its camp. The sound of hooves announces the arrival of a new commander. An old white-haired noble rides in, flanked by his personal guard. He surveys the desolate landscape, a place where empires are forged and broken. The old commander begins to recount a recent and very interesting development. He explains that a Penslot knight appeared, predicting a village chief would seek them out. A cunning smile plays on his lips. It seems the bait has been taken. Guess someone's plan is coming together. And we meet another player in this game, Kincaid, leader of a notorious mercenary corps. Kincaid notes that the knights of great nations all have their own peculiar ways. The old noble looks down from his horse, suggesting they share a common ground. He claims that he and the mercenary leader are in the same boat. Kincaid agrees, admitting they've both been caught in the traps of powerful knights. With their shared history established, the noble moves on to the present mission. He orders the captured village chief to guide them into the forest. Their destination, the home of the talking ogre that Kincaid has been hired to hunt. Guess the job description was very specific. Our story then shifts to a quiet moment in the deep woods. A powerful ogre lands silently, his senses on high alert. This is the slaughterer of the central continent, a legend at peace in his own domain. Half a year has passed since Leyon and his mother cut all ties with Faren village. He can't help but wonder if they made the right choice. They've been living in the ruins of their old home, a constant reminder of that night. The weight of their isolation is beginning to show on his face. Worse still, his mother's health is visibly declining. He worries about the coming winter, knowing they aren't prepared. He can only guess at the thoughts running through her mind. But his thoughts are interrupted by a sudden sound from the woods. He shakes off his worries, focusing on the immediate task of finding firewood. But it seems he's not the only one out gathering supplies today. His predator's senses flare, a new presence suddenly entering his territory. A blur of motion cuts through the forest canopy, something moving with impossible speed. The sound of a heavy impact echoes through the trees, a sign of a new conflict. A hulking troll charges through the undergrowth, met by a lone armored warrior. The beast roars in fury, its eyes glowing with mindless aggression. But the knight is unfazed, meeting the charge with cold, professional steel. He dodges a clumsy swing, his movements precise and deadly. In a single fluid motion, his blade finds its mark, carving a bloody path. The massive beast crashes to the forest floor, its life bleeding out into the dirt. The warrior stands in silence, his grim work finished for now. He stands over the fallen beast, a silent testament to his skill. He flicks the blood from his blade, mocking the beast's title as king of the forest. He turns away, utterly unimpressed by the lack of a real challenge. The old noble and another knight arrive, calling out the mercenary leader's name, Kincaid. The noble questions Kincaid, asking if he's certain about what he witnessed. He finds it hard to believe their target is that dangerous, despite its reputation. Kincaid wonders aloud if their true target, the ogre, is deliberately holding back. The village chief suggests Leyon might be the reason, but admits he's not certain. He explains that for all intents and purposes, the boy has been abandoned. Kincaid processes this new information, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. The chief realizes this wasn't a random encounter, but a deliberate warning. But Kincaid is caught completely off guard by a voice from the trees. A voice apologizes for the unskilled kill, claiming it was an accident. He then politely asks the hunters to turn back and leave his forest. Leyon reveals himself, stating that he and his mother wish to be left alone. Kincaid can only stare, confirming their target is indeed a talking ogre. But he quickly scoffs, making it clear he didn't come here to negotiate. He's here to hold Leyon accountable, and his patience is wearing thin. He delivers a chilling ultimatum: surrender, or he'll go after his mother. And with that, Leyon explodes forward, the time for talk officially over. Leyon moves like a blur, his attack aimed to end this confrontation. His eyes burn with cold blue light, channeling his protective fury. Kincaid can only watch as the half-blood's hand closes in. The impact sends a shockwave tearing through the forest floor. But the village chief cries out, trying to stop Leyon from making a fatal mistake. Leyon explains that after the Uruk raid, the village chose to cut ties with the world. He agreed to leave, blaming himself for the death and destruction. But his mother chose to follow him into exile, giving up everything for his sake. And now he declares that protecting her is his only remaining purpose. Looks like Kincaid really pushed the wrong button. His gaze locks onto the chief, a silent plea for understanding. But Kincaid's sword is already in motion, a blur of green light. The blade misses Leyon's head by a mere inch, a clear warning shot. He twists out of the way, the attack's speed catching him off guard. His eyes widen in shock, realizing this was no ordinary attack. Kincaid explains the attack wasn't meant to kill, just to paralyze. He boasts that his expensive gear has already earned its keep. Guess you get what you pay for. Kincaid then addresses the talking ogre, demanding a conversation. He asks if Leyon knows a man named Tylok, a name that clearly registers. He explains Tylok was a mercenary hired to assist a Swearen knight, but that same mercenary was later found dead, killed by an unknown knight. Kincaid reveals that the mercenary was found dead near their home. He paints a brutal picture of the murder, which happened right in front of Leyon's mother. The mercenary leader then turns his attention back to the half-blood. He asks if Leyon's mother ever mentioned this little incident. You know, just casual dinner conversation. He suggests that if she hid the truth from her own son, there must have been a very good or very dark reason for it. The question hits Leyon hard, planting a seed of doubt in his mind. Our story flashes back to their quiet, isolated life in the ruined cabin. We see Leonia trying to find a moment of peace in their lonely exile. But that peace was shattered, her eyes filled with a familiar, haunting terror. A green blade plunges into the earth, a swift and silent execution. The green-clad knight had appeared, silencing the mercenary right before her eyes. Back in the present, Kincaid's words hang heavy in the air. Leyon's mind races, trying to reconcile this story with the mother he knows. He remembers her long, quiet nights spent staring out into the darkness. He'd assumed it was just the weight of their lonely, isolated life. But now he wonders if she was keeping a vigil, waiting for a threat to return. Kincaid explains that his mercenaries have been tracking this mystery knight ever since. Their hunt has finally led them right back to this very forest. And their trail ends at the one place connecting all these events, Leyon's own home. Leyon's confusion is palpable, his mind reeling from Kincaid's words. A memory flashes of his mother, her face etched with a familiar worry. He remembers that night, rushing to warn her of the danger outside. But she had calmly told him to stop, her voice steady despite the threat. He'd frozen in his tracks, completely baffled by her composure. Kincaid confirms that this strange power surpasses even a half-blood ogre. He explains that while the Penslot princess was thought to be dead, rumors had begun to circulate. And in that memory, his mother admits she's alive and knew they were coming. She had stood her ground, a queen in exile facing down her past. And now, Leyon's own voice echoes in his mind, asking what she meant. Kincaid seems amused by the situation, recognizing the familiar tricks of a knight. He claims that he too was caught in a knight's web and must now fulfill his duty. Leyon's composure finally shatters, demanding to know why his mother hid everything. She calmly tells him to quiet his heart, preparing to finally reveal the truth. But he can't, screaming that her years of silent suffering now feel like a lie. All the while, Kincaid and his employers watch the family's painful history unravel. Leyon recounts the facts. Tylok was killed by a knight, but not the one he fought. He deduces that the killer must have been an agent connected to his mother's past. He remembers returning to their ruined home after the battle with Herman, and he recalls the strange energy he felt that night, a presence he couldn't explain. He recalls that unfamiliar presence, the one he couldn't place until now. He looks at his mother, admitting he no longer understands anything. His frustration boils over as he demands to know how long he must remain ignorant. The hunters can only watch as this family drama unfolds in the dead of night. Leonia remains silent, her expression a mask of weary resignation. But her sorrow hardens into a cold resolve as she finally addresses her son. Leyon asks about the duty Kincaid mentioned, the price for his actions. He believes he must take responsibility for the mercenary's death. His mother cuts straight to the point, asking what payment they demanded. He reveals their price. He must replace the dead mercenary. Guess he's joining the gig economy. But Leonia argues that Tylok got what he deserved for threatening a helpless woman. Kincaid is stunned into silence as the noble questions why Leyon didn't just fight back. The village chief desperately pleads with Leonia, trying to de-escalate the situation. He explains that Kincaid values his mercenaries, making this a safer path for Leyon. He offers her the village's protection again, insisting she can't keep living like this. But Leonia calmly tells him not to worry about her own safety. She understands the chief's motives, but insists her well-being isn't the priority. Because what truly matters here is her son's own decision. She turns to Leyon, the weight of the moment hanging over them all. Guess it's time for our boy to make a career choice, and she asks him the one question that will decide his future. What does he want to do? Leyon faces his mother, the weight of his future resting on his next words. 5 days later, our story shifts to the desolate Truvania Rocky Mountains. Kincaid ascends the steps of the ancient ruins, his purpose clear. He announces they've reached their destination, a place of forgotten battles. The village chief explains this is no mere ruin, but a secret waypoint. It holds a teleportation spell, a one-way ticket to the Arnia frontline. The chief gives him final instructions on how to survive his new life. He looks utterly defeated, asking if Kincaid will join him on his journey. But Kincaid only scoffs, amused by the chief's misplaced concern. He explains he has a meeting with the Penslot Knight to collect his fee. You know, business is business. Kincaid has one final question before their journey truly begins. He asks why Leyon held back his power, choosing capture over freedom. Leyon's glowing eyes betray the conflict within as he admits he doesn't know. He explains his mother's greatest wish was for him to not become a monster. He believes that if he can somehow overcome his monstrous fate, he can finally earn the right to return to the life he left behind. He remembers his mother's pained expression as he walked away. But a flicker of hope returns, vowing to see her again with his head held high. The mercenary leader can only listen to the boy's strange philosophy. Kincaid finds it interesting, a noble goal on a battlefield that turns men into beasts. With the teleportation site confirmed, Kincaid gives the final order to move out. And just like that, Leyon arrives, his eyes glowing in the harsh desert sun. He finds himself in a vast, unforgiving desert, a lone fortress on the horizon. The ancient spell activates, transporting him across the continent in a flash of blue light. Welcome to the Arnia frontline, the barracks of the Kincaid Mercenary Corps. Here, every soldier is on edge, their blades always ready for a fight. His arrival doesn't go unnoticed, as the mercenaries spot the ogre near their leader's tent. A man named Baxter is called out, apparently the one Leyon is meant to find. This is the heart of the Kincaid mercenary territory, a place forged by war. Even on the front lines, life goes on at the regional forge. Guess it's not all doom and gloom. The blacksmith reflects on Tylok's fate, admitting he's not surprised by the outcome. He explains the berserker favored speed over defense, a fatal flaw in his gear. He believes a warrior's equipment tells the entire story of their life and death. A massive, elf-like warrior approaches, ready to get down to business. He and a cloaked companion stand in the forge, their purpose still unclear. The cloaked figure requests protective gear first, with no expense spared. Guess someone's got a generous sponsor. But the blacksmith insists that a user's needs are far more important than their budget. The big guy, Baxter, encourages the newcomer to speak freely about what he requires. But the cloaked man seems to question if armor is even necessary for someone like him. A memory flashes of a brutal battle, proving his deadly skill in close-quarters combat. The cloaked man explains he already accounts for his ogre nature in a fight. He points to his rapid healing, making heavy armor seem redundant. But Baxter insists that in wartime, proper equipment is non-negotiable. He warns that finding gear capable of stopping a knight's blow is nearly impossible. The blacksmith grows impatient, giving the cloaked man a day to make his choice. But the cloaked man refuses, stating he only has a single requirement. The blacksmith leans closer, intrigued by this singular, focused request. His only request is for gear that will help him remain as inconspicuous as possible. The blacksmith and Baxter are both stunned into silence by the strange request. And so, in the heart of the Arnia frontline, a new chapter begins for our boy. Our story flashes back 10 years, to the fall of the kingdom of Pardia. During that time, the lands of Arnia were also invaded by the Helpplane forces. A group of weary soldiers stands vigil under a cold, starry sky. Baxter recounts his past, dragged from his home to serve as a serf soldier. He and his comrades were thrown into the meat grinder of a 2-year campaign. He explains that with Tylok's death, he is now the last survivor of his old unit. Back in the present, he and Leyon stand in a quiet, shared silence. Leyon offers a quiet apology, understanding the weight of the mercenary's past. But Baxter tells him not to dwell on it, a simple gesture of acceptance. Because on the battlefield, he was a different man, a whirlwind of pure, unrestrained fury. He explains that battlefields were once simple places of life and death. He recalls standing his ground against a wave of overwhelming enemy power. It was a place where a single moment decided who lived and who died. But then, a new kind of enemy appeared, one that shattered all their tactics. Even a veteran like Baxter was caught completely off guard by their power. Because until recently, the rules of war had been brutally straightforward. But these new soldiers were an unbreakable wall, instilling a new kind of fear. It was a terror that could break even a man like Tylock, who clung so desperately to life. Baxter remembers the grim reality of that war, a conflict that changed everything. Guess the good old days of simple stabbing were over, and it was on that battlefield that his comrade finally began to change. Baxter explains that Tylock's obsession with survival ultimately led to his death. He warns Leyon not to fall into the same trap of obsession. It's a lesson he must learn, especially with so much at stake here. The Kincaid mercenary camp is a grim collection of tents and ruins. Baxter shows Leyon to his quarters for the night. 5-star accommodations. The cold moon hangs over the camp, a silent witness to his new life. Leyon can only look up, the weight of his decision settling in. He's told he'll train with the common soldiers until his role is decided. The news seems to catch our boy completely off guard. And just like that, his training begins with the crack of a whip. The whip cracks, but Leon's hand shoots out, catching it mid-air. With a single tug, he sends the soldier stumbling forward. But a new challenger enters the ring, a white-haired warrior in ornate armor. The whip becomes a projectile, a blur of motion aimed at the newcomer. But the warrior catches it effortlessly, halting the attack in its tracks. Leyon can only stare, surprised by this unexpected display of power. The warrior is impressed, noting the half-blood's considerable strength and speed. He asks Baxter if Kincaid brought this monster in to compete with his own beasts. But Baxter quickly intervenes, telling the warrior that Leyon is an official mercenary. The warrior Rosemary just laughs, questioning if laws even apply to monsters. Guess HR policies are a bit flexible out here. Rosemary remains silent, her expression unreadable behind her ornate helmet. She questions Kincaid's affection for his new pet, gesturing to a muzzled beast at her feet. The creature can only whimper, its glowing eyes filled with a sad, subdued light. As the leader of the mixed-race unit, she warns that such beasts often end up eating their masters. But Baxter snaps back, reminding her that Leyon can understand every word she's saying. Rosemary scoffs at the idea, calling his speech a rare product of obsolete alchemy. She leans in with a sinister grin, demanding to know the secrets of his birth. She muses that if she could replicate him, the Help Plane's puppets would be easy pickings. Baxter can only call her a madwoman, advising Leyon to ignore her completely. And for a moment, Leyon seems to consider taking the veteran's advice. But Rosemary just smirks, asking if the half-blood covets her. Her smile is a mask of pure, condescending amusement. But Leyon meets her challenge, proposing a match with himself on the line. He tells her to bring her best, promising to give her everything if he wins. But if she loses, he warns that she will pay a heavy price. 3 days later, the stage for this confrontation is finally set. A massive arena on the Arnia front line is packed with eager spectators. In the crowd, a man complains about the fuss over a non-knight's duel. His companion calls the crowd pathetic, wondering how much money is on the line. Guess even on the front lines, gambling is the main event. But he then turns with a sly grin, asking his friend who he bet on. The man with the red beard seems confused by the line of questioning. His companion notes that he's not obsessing over the betting pool like the others. The red-bearded man cuts to the chase, asking what brings him here. The man's expression hardens, questioning if he's connected to the duelists. He then accuses him of being a spy from an enemy nation, but the red-bearded man quickly silences him, claiming it's classified information. He reveals he's a swindler sent by Rosemary to manage public opinion, standard PR. He explains that while the outcome is certain, perception is everything. He even claims they've bribed the talking ogre to ensure the right outcome. His companion realizes with a grin that the match is already fixed. An announcer's voice booms across the arena, heralding the arrival of the fighters. In the stands, Kincaid watches with a weary expression, the wait finally over. The heavy gates swing open, revealing the path to the blood-soaked sand. Kincaid's gaze is fixed on the arena floor, his expression unreadable. From the darkness, a hulking, bull-headed beast emerges, its eyes burning with rage. And from the other side, a chained warrior waits in the shadows, his head bowed. His strange horned helmet hides his face, but not the weariness of a long fight. Elsewhere, Baxter and a white-haired commander discuss the recklessness of this duel. The commander explains that Rosemary has been looking for a fight for a while. Looks like she finally got one. He questions their champion, asking if their only plan is some last-minute cramming. Kincaid can only watch, a quiet uncertainty in his gaze. The commander, Deneve, insists they must settle this before Kincaid arrives. He knows their leader is a schemer, and the thought alone is exhausting. But the village chief vouches for Leyon's talent, having witnessed it firsthand. Deneve, the spear instructor, just scoffs at the idea of cramming. He claims that from a human perspective, that's all it could possibly be. With his title revealed, he declares it's time to move at full speed. Back in the arena, the guards call for the challenger to enter the ring. Leyon remains silent, his hand tightening on the hilt of his weapon. And from the other side, Rosemary's champion steps into the light. A guard questions Leyon's choice of armor, wondering if he's a bit too covered up for the show. He reminds Leyon that the audience has certain, more revealing expectations. But our boy simply states that it's not a problem, his voice calm and steady. From the stands, Kincaid and his men watch the spectacle unfold below. Leyon steps into the arena, a hulking, unknown champion ready for battle. He kneels in the center of the ring, a silent prayer before the slaughter. Rosemary watches with a smug grin, curious about the ogre hidden beneath the armor. Across the sand, her champion, a massive bull-headed beast, begins its charge. Its eye glows with a primal, red-hot fury, a beast bred for the arena. The creature lets out a furious roar, ready to tear its opponent limb from limb. Leyon raises his head, his expression hidden but his intent clear. But he doesn't move, leaving his opponent utterly confused by the lack of action. The guard admits he forgot a key detail Rosemary had mentioned. He hands Leyon a red cloth, telling him to wear it somewhere obvious. With this, he believes the beast will know exactly where to aim. To make it a fair fight. The bull-headed monster's eyes burn with rage, its patience finally gone. It charges forward, a blur of fur and fury aimed to obliterate him. The guard can only scream, realizing the fight is about to end before it even begins. But the beast's charge is brought to a sudden, jarring halt. A spear finds its mark, pinning the monster in place with brutal efficiency. Leyon meets the charge from above, his spear clashing against the monster's horns. The beast is stunned, the sheer force of the impact rattling it to its core. The blow connects with brutal finality, snapping the monster's head back. Leyon lands, digging his heels into the sand to push the massive creature back. He's forced to give ground, his feet carving trenches in the arena floor. The two are now locked in a brutal contest of pure, unadulterated strength. Horn meets steel as neither warrior is willing to yield a single inch. But the beast unleashes a wild swing, a desperate move to break the stalemate. The attack sends Leyon soaring into the air, a shadow against the sun. The crowd roars, stunned to see Kincaid's new champion take flight. Guess the show is just getting started. He descends like a meteor, his spear aimed to end the fight from above. From the stands, Kincaid's men are shocked, realizing this isn't the fixed match they were promised. His strange horned helmet cuts through the air, a symbol of this new warrior. The spear's tip gleams, a single point of light promising a brutal impact. A memory flashes back to his training with Deneve, the spear master. The first lesson, a spear's greatest advantage is the distance it creates. Every strike must be decisive, a calculated risk in the dance of battle. He was taught the rhythm of the fight, the art of thrusting and retreating. To overcome the weapon's linear nature, a warrior must be fluid. He learned that proper footwork is key, a lesson in not tripping over your own feet in a deathmatch. Deneve's final lesson, a spear can pierce through even chaos. Back in the present, Leyon becomes a living projectile against the sun. He holds his weapon steady, a student putting his lesson into practice. The beast looks up, caught between decision and the chaos of battle. It can only brace itself as the attack homes in from above. Deneve's voice echoes. To wield a spear is to make a choice. And Leyon's choice is to bring this fight to a swift, brutal end. The spear tip finds its mark right between the monster's eyes. The final lesson, a spearman must become accustomed to contradiction. The impact is absolute, a pillar of light and dust erupting from the arena floor. Looks like class is dismissed. From the stands, Rosemary can only watch with a smug, satisfied grin. But the rest of the crowd is in absolute shock at the sudden turn of events. As the dust settles, Leyon stands over the fallen beast, his victory swift and absolute. He holds his ground, the muscles in his arm tense from the force of the blow. The spear is lodged deep in the monster's flesh, a brutal and decisive strike. Leyon looks down, his expression hidden, his grim work now complete. The beast can only roar in agony, pinned to the arena floor. But in its final moments, tears stream from its eyes, a creature in pure anguish. Leyon's eyes glow with a cold blue light, ready to deliver the final blow. Moments later, the night settles over the Kincaid command post on the Arnia front line. Kincaid scolds Leyon, reminding him he's barely arrived and already caused chaos. He lectures the boy, explaining that one wrong move in the arena can be fatal. He's stunned that Leyon would risk everything, defying his own fate. He asks if it was all just to prove a point, but Leyon remains silent. But Deneve cuts in, admitting that while reckless, the move solved a major problem. He explains that minotaurs are creatures of sorcery, half-bloods by design. This means their blood carries the scent of humanity, a dangerous trigger for an ogre. And according to their intel, that scent is what drives Leyon insane. It's a trigger that awakens the mindless, bloodthirsty beast within him. Kincaid realizes the truth. Leyon has finally conquered his uncontrollable rage. Deneve presses Leyon, demanding to see the power that kept the beast at bay. Kincaid echoes the sentiment, asking for a demonstration of this newfound control. But Leyon can only clutch his chest, the answer not so easily explained. Kincaid's gaze hardens. He's already done his own investigation. He reveals the pendant from Leyon's mother, confirming it holds no magic. He can't believe a simple trinket could be the key to taming a monster. Deneve scoffs, realizing it all comes down to something as simple as emotion. Kincaid can only agree, admitting it's the only theory that fits the facts. With no other answers forthcoming, he decides the interrogation is over for now. He then adds a final surprising note, a message from Rosemary's unit, thanking them for sparing their monster. Guess they're not sore losers after all. Deneve explains that the duel's outcome was never the point. What matters is that Rosemary's reward has arrived, and it's time to move. The reward turns out to be two beastmen, chained and clearly distressed. The creatures can only whimper in the presence of a true predator like Leyon. Deneve admits their camp isn't equipped to handle these new arrivals. He leaves the decision to Leyon, asking what he plans to do with them. Leyon's expression hardens, a plan already forming in his mind. He offers them a path to freedom, telling them to follow his scent back to the forest. He warns them that a life in the wild will be difficult after being domesticated. Guess freedom isn't free. But he makes the alternative brutally clear. Stay here, and they'll be used as tools until they die. He tells them that no matter what life they choose, the decision is theirs alone. The two beasts look to the sky, their resolve hardening in the pale moonlight. And with that, they run for the wilderness, choosing a dangerous freedom over certain death. But the moment seems to have triggered something in Baxter's companion. The hooded man reflects on their journey, a grim realization dawning on him. He wonders aloud if, even for a fleeting moment, he was ever truly free. The question breaks him as he collapses under the weight of his own past. The moon hangs over the desolate fortress, a silent witness to their despair. Life in the Kincaid camp continues, a pocket of light in the vast darkness. A guard briefs Leyon and Baxter as they walk through the quiet camp. The guard explains he'll be with the regular troops until his post is assigned. He's shown to his new quarters, a simple tent in the vast camp. Leyon is told to get some rest and keep a low profile. Standard advice for a giant ogre. Alone at last, he removes the heavy horned helmet. He stands unmasked, the half-blood warrior in his new lonely home. He sets aside the helmet, a symbol of the role he must now play. His fist clenches, his resolve hardening in the quiet darkness. He pulls out the glowing pendant, a final gift from his mother. His thoughts turn to her, the reason he endures all of this. He places it around his neck, a tangible link to the life he vows to reclaim. He thinks of his mother, her face a mask of cold, unbreakable resolve. And in the darkness of his tent, Leyon reflects on the path that led him here. A memory flashes, his eyes glowing with the power he's learned to control. He recalls the fight in the forest, easily dodging the hunter's clumsy strike. It was a battle that forged his focus into a cold, sharp point. Meanwhile, at the rear of the camp, the night is far from peaceful. Two guards on watch are stunned by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. A white-haired warrior appears, his glowing blade dripping with fresh blood. The guards recognize the weapon's shimmer, the unmistakable sign of an aura blade. The knight walks away, leaving behind a severed head as a calling card. Guess he doesn't believe in knocking. A new warrior in ornate blue armor tells his companion they're getting close. The white-haired knight, Sesrak, holds the severed head with pure disgust. But a sinister smile spreads across his face as he admits he can't just toss it aside. We learn this is Sesrak, a lesser knight from Sawiran, who sees this grim trophy as a valuable bargaining chip.